By merely touching a sword, the young man acquires the skills of a Vo, enabling him to forge divine weapons despite having never held a hammer. Even master blacksmiths are left speechless by his godlike techniques, a stark contrast to the ordinary boy Vo Tan was just the day before. After being tricked by a friend into eating a large poisonous mushroom, Vo Tan experienced a vivid hallucination where he became the legendary O Yezi Grandmaster. As the god of metallurgy who forged 5 divine swords to ascend to heaven, O Yezi was celebrating when a splash of wine jolted Vo Tan back to reality. He awoke to the sound of an arrogant nobleman shouting at his father's clinic, complaining about the agonizing pain of his treatment. While Tiu Trung complained about the difficult nature of court officials, Vo Tan found his father despondently holding a bent, low-quality needle. Vo Tan began to hear strange sounds emanating from the needle, and wondered if it was a lingering side effect of the poisonous mushroom. Trembling with anger at the poor craftsmanship of the needle, he walked through the streets and found the low-quality goods there equally repulsive. His reaction changed when he touched a masterfully crafted sword, feeling a surge of joy that made onlookers mistake him for a deviant. Vo Tan realized that his dream of O Yezi had granted him the ability to perceive the intricate techniques of master blacksmith. Driven by curiosity as the master's techniques unfolded before his eyes, he headed to a local forge to put his new perception to the test. He presented 2 needles to Thatch Vo Thang, the son of a master blacksmith, but was met with mockery for questioning their quality. When challenged to identify flaws in a pile of weapons, Thatch Tan instantly selected the finest swords in the shop. Stunned that the boy recognized his father's work, Thatch Tri Thang defensively dared Vo Tan to try forging something himself if he was so capable. Accepting the challenge, Vo Tan prepared the forge and began to apply the mystical knowledge he had acquired in his dream. His rhythmic and expert hammer strikes left Thatch Tri Thang in shock, as the boy's skill appeared to rival that of his own father. It felt as though the legendary O Yezi himself was at the anvil, leaving Thatch Tri Thang eager to witness the full extent of this talent. After completing his warm-up, Vo Tan forged a set of masterpiece acupuncture needles for his father to use in his medical practice. The high-ranking officials who visited the clinic were amazed, as the new needles were so perfect that the treatments became entirely painless. Word of the miraculous and painless treatments spread quickly, making his father's clinic the most renowned in the entire city. Every day, crowds gather for acupuncture, but a sudden commotion in the queue draws Vo Tan's curious attention. He sees a dangerous swordsman pointing a blade at a man, moving with lightning speed to carve the name eccentric physician onto the victim's chest. Realizing the carving is non-lethal, Vo Tan recognizes the old master as the murderous physician, a notorious and deadly figure. This wandering master is one of the world's 8 great physicians, an eccentric who uses both medicine and his blade to decide the fate of others. He judges life and death without regard for good or evil, and has reportedly murdered dozens of innocent doctors throughout the Central Plains. Terrified for his father's safety, Vo Tan stares at Lai Trung's back and screams in a fit of desperate rage before falling to his knees. As Vo Tan tries to rush toward his father's clinic, Tran Tong grabs his shoulder to hold him back and urges him to remain calm. Tran Tong, a martial artist of the King Cheng sect, warns the frantic young man that the physician is far too powerful to oppose. Vo Tan asks if even the branch leader could stop him, but Tran Tong only closes his eyes in distress as sweat beads on his forehead. Tran Tong admits that not even his own master could stand against the prowess of the eccentric physician. When Vo Tan calls the man evil, Tran Tong explains that his master once relied on the physician to save the King Cheng branch leader's life. Overwhelmed by the revelation that the sect leader owes his life to such a man, Vo Tan collapses in despair while Tran Tong tries to comfort him. Tran Tong gently places a hand on the boy's shoulder and tells him not to worry too much about the physician's dark reputation. Facing the clinic's red doors, Tran Tong remarks that while the physician is indeed strange, he is not a truly malevolent person. Lai Trung confidently pushes the doors open and enters with a smile, while Vo Tan watches the man's sword with intense focus. Vo Tan breathes a sigh of relief when he notices that Lai Trung's sleeves are perfectly clean and free of any bloodstain. Lai Trung suddenly places a heavy hand on Vo Tan's shoulder and addresses the young man directly. With a mysterious smile, Lai Trung mentions the rumors regarding Vo Tan's exceptional skills in medicine and blacksmithing. Lai Trung leans in close to ask if Vo Tan knows the man inside, causing the boy to tremble as he confirms that he does. Seeming satisfied, Lai Trung orders Vo Tan to lead the way, and the boy has no choice but to obey. Vo T letter 1 gaze is locked onto the old sword hilt the man carries as he wipes sweat from his face and struggles to suppress his inner fear. Startled by Lai Trung's voice, Vo T letter 1 looks over to see the man wearing a haunting smile and asking why he has not yet departed. Vo T letter 1 stammers a polite reply as thick black smoke begins to billow from the wooden building, catching Lai Trung's attention. Pointing in surprise, Lai Trung asks if Vo T letter 1 was truly the one who created the item rather than his father, prompting the boy to clasp his hand. Vo T letter 1 nods obediently with a smile, causing Lai Trung to throw his head back and laugh with great excitement. Lai Trung remarks that the world's strangest occurrences always seem to gather in Sichuan, ignoring the saliva flying from his mouth as he laughs. He notes that even a physician's son has taken up metallurgy, while the burly man nearby asks Vo T letter 1 about the stranger's identity. Vo T letter 1 quietly explains the man is from the martial world as Lai Trung wipes away tears of laughter, claiming a person's background is irrelevant. After his fit of laughter, Lai Trung asks Vo T letter 1 to forge 30 needles and presents a piece of shimmering gold as payment. The sight of the brilliant gold dazzles both Vo T letter 1 and his companion, who stare in shock at the payment offered by Lai Trung. Vo T letter 1 quickly accepts the gold bar with both hands and bows in gratitude, inviting the guest to stay for a meal while he works. When Vo T letter 1 promises to finish the task before sunset, a surprised Lai Trung frowns and asks if he truly means by the end of this very day. Vo T letter 1 nods firmly, leaving the man incredulous that the work will be completed today rather than months from now. Vo T letter 1 remains calm as Lai Trung studies him, noting that even renowned masters would require several months for such a task. Clutching the gold with a radiant smile and eyes fixed on the treasure, Vo T letter 1 insists he can complete the order within the day. Lai Trung scowls with disdain, suspecting the boy is lying out of greed since the item is complex and has not been prepared in advance. Still mesmerized by the gold, Vo T letter 1 declares that his needles will be even more exquisite and superior to those made by his father. Clenching his fist with confidence, Vo T letter 1 solemnly assures the old gentleman that he will not fail to deliver the item. The burly man points at Vo T letter 1 and vouches for his skill, bringing a sudden silence to the group as they stand together. After observing them, Lai Trung suddenly flings his purple robe aside, revealing a sword that radiates a terrifying and invisible pressure. Vo Tan nearly forgets his pain while mesmerized by the gold, as Lai Trung sits down composedly and casts a warning glance toward him. With a dangerous smile, Lai Trung threatens that failure will result in death, prompting a piercing scream from Vo Tan that rises with the smoke. Sparks suddenly erupt from the chimney as bright flames begin to dance around the dry firewood. Lai Trung silently observes Vo Tan and his companion working diligently while reflecting on the arduous process of crafting perfect acupuncture needles. After drawing steel threads and grinding them individually, only the straightest are chosen, just as Vo Tan raises his hammer to begin the task. Knowing that Tang clan needles cannot be forged by mere luck, Lai Trung watches intently as Vo Tan grips his hammer with a powerful arm. Lai Trung wonders how a mere physician developed such solid muscle, but a sudden loud noise abruptly draws his attention back to the forge. As black smoke billows higher, the rhythmic sound of forging fills the air while Vo Tan grips his hammer tightly and swings it upward. Lai Trung stares in astonishment as he watches the precise way Vo Tan strikes the metal with his heavy hammer. Vo Tan's muscles ripple with effort as he grinds the glowing red metal, his hammer repeatedly striking the heated material. Vo Tan uses pliers to fold the metal before hammering it thin and throwing the piece aside while swinging his hammer once more. This display is reflected in Lai Trung's eyes as Vo Tan calmly announces that the requested work is finally complete. Despite being drenched in sweat, Vo Tan smiles and presents the needle, though he is shocked when Lai Trung asks to take him as a disciple. Vo Tan retreats cautiously and questions why he was chosen, to which Lai Trung explains that he is not meant to waste away in a medical room. Lai Trung flashes a menacing smile and asks if he intends to refuse, causing a panicked Vo Tan to stammer and avoid eye contact. After a moment of quiet reflection, Vo Tan admits he is growing used to blacksmithing, but wonders what he could possibly learn from the man. Lai Trung finds the question amusing and smirks as he asks what the boy expects to learn. Lai Trung reaches for his sword as a light flashes between his fingers, calmly stating he can teach two things while Vo Tan mutters in confusion. As white smoke rises from the furnace, the muscular young man is horrified to discover 3 needles have already been embedded in his shoulder. Vo Tan looks around in terror at the shattered furniture before Lai Trung identifies the two subjects as martial arts and medicine. Li Zhang smirks and asks if Wu Jin wants to learn, prompting the young man to suppress his excitement at the thought of becoming a top master's disciple. Realizing he is being invited by one of the world's 3 greatest physicians, Wu Jin envisions himself standing before the gates of a magnificent fortress. This opportunity offers both martial and medical mastery, ensuring that even the King Cheng sect would no longer dare to look down on their clinic. Despite the prestige of the offer, Wu Jin wonders aloud why the elderly master is granting him such a rare and valuable chance. Li Zhang calmly explains that traveling with a nimble blacksmith is practical, but Wu Jin remains skeptical that such a simple reason is the only motivation. Li Zhang places a friendly arm around him and offers to teach him both arts, causing Wu Jin to break into a nervous sweat despite his polite demeanor. Wu Jin views the arrangement as a mere transaction rather than a traditional apprenticeship, but Li Zhang dismisses the distinction as he points toward the horizon. The master tests him by asking how to treat a patient suffering from evil qi and chaotic blood flow, prompting Wu Jin to stand straight and respond with focus. After Wu Jin suggests a remedy of poria and licorice, a satisfied Li Zhang declares that anyone who has mastered the medical classics is fit to learn martial arts. Wu Jin questions the connection between the two fields, but Li Zhang challenges his assumption that martial arts is solely a matter of physical strength. Li Zhang explains that teaching a fool is pointless because they cannot recognize value even when presented with it, leaving Wu Jin to ponder the nature of mediocrity. Holding his acupuncture needles, Li Zhang emphasizes that ordinary people can never truly grasp the profound subtlety and precision of his craft. Wu Jin gazes at the master with a mixture of nervous anticipation and newfound determination before asking a final, crucial question. He asks if it is possible for him to become a first-class master, a request that briefly surprises Li Zhang enough to make him repeat the words. As Wu Jin walks away, Li Zhang's voice follows him with the reminder that true talent will always be recognized by those who know where to look. Clenching his fist in a display of absolute resolve, Wu Jin leaves the building with the firm intention of proving his worth. Filled with hope and excitement, Wu Jin laughs to himself and throws a punch into the air, dreaming of reaching the pinnacle of martial power. He continues his exuberant display by spinning and kicking high into the air, shouting with joy as he mimics the movements of a great warrior. Wu Jin loses his balance and tumbles to the ground, but he quickly stands up and brushes himself off when he notices his father approaching. Maintaining a bright smile, Wu Jin bows respectfully to his father and offers a polite apology for his late return. Vo Tan's father suddenly places a trembling hand on his shoulder, prompting the worried young man to support his father's arm and ask if he is all right. Looking up with eyes full of tears, the father grinds his teeth and stammers that he feared the worst when he heard Vo Tan had left with the eccentric physician. His body trembles from his frail health as he explains he thought the physician's visit was just out of curiosity, while Vo Tan smiles and reassures him. Vo Tan explains the man is not as scary as rumored and helps his father inside, who notes that Tran Tong had said the same thing. Relieved his son is safe, the father asks why the visit to the forge took so long, and Vo Tan's explanation leaves the old man in deep thought. Vo Tan mentions the physician wants him as a disciple and gave him until tomorrow to decide, then watches his father anxiously as sweat rolls down his cheek. Considering the physician's reputation and the sudden offer of apprenticeship, Vo Tan grows worried as he sees his father's trembling intensify. Vo Tan calls out to his father with a forced smile, but the old man suddenly stops speaking and rushes past him into the house. Vo Tan reaches out in alarm, but his father soon returns with silver ingots wrapped in white cloth, which the young man accepts with a look of confusion. Vo Tan asks why he is being given so much silver, but his father simply tells him to prepare for his journey, leaving the young man stunned. Vo Tan hesitates, pointing out the lack of help at home and the physician's strange reputation while sighing in discouragement. He suggests the offer might be a whim, but his father reaches out and mutters that the shortage of manpower is of no consequence. Placing a hand on his shoulder, the father leans in and firmly tells Vo Tan that this is the only time he will have the chance to leave. Deeply moved by these words, Vo Tan's eyes widen as he looks toward the ancient tree standing before them. As his father stands as still as the old tree, Vo Tan feels a sense of clarity while a gentle breeze stirs his hair. Seeing butterflies around the tree, Vo Tan realizes his father was once a young man too, then closes his eyes on the grass to begin his martial arts training. After 2 days, he successfully completes the small heavenly circulation and feels his internal strength steadily accumulating with each passing day. His hair flutters in a magical aura as Vo Tan opens his eyes after merging the spiritual energy, wondering how to describe this new sensation. Feeling he has taken a step forward in strength, he sits enveloped in magic and reflects on his father's words about this being his only chance to lead. Filled with gratitude toward his father, Vo Tan ignores Lai Trung as the man throws a chestnut at him and asks if he is already missing Miss Huan. A chestnut falls from Vo T-Letter-1-EADN's head as he looks up and answers Lai Trung while the old man sits on a tree branch, staring into the distance. Vo T-Letter-1-EADN stands up excitedly, clenching his fists and sharing that his internal energy has increased, prompting Lai Trung to jump down and offer praise. Vo T-Letter-1-EADN asks if he truly has talent, to which Lai Trung smiles and assesses that while his talent is decent, his energy accumulation speed is only average. Grinning broadly, Vo T-Letter-1-EADN throws a punch to show off, noting that he completed the small orbit in just a few days compared to the usual 10. Full of energy and thinking of his dreams, Vo T-Letter-1-EADN credits his martial talent to a special dream, leaving Lai Trung confused as he tosses him a sword. Vo T-Letter-1-EADN catches the sword in surprise before Lai Trung picks up a wooden stick and points it toward him with a proposal. Lai Trung challenges the youth to swing the sword, promising to carry him out of Sichuan if he can manage to cut even a piece of his clothing. As Lai Trung looks on with pride, Vo T-Letter-1-EADN draws the steel blade and stares at its reflection with a pale, hesitant expression. Feeling insecure about using a sharp, lethal weapon, Vo T-Letter-1-EADN breaks out in a cold sweat and protests that he might accidentally kill someone. He suddenly recalls his 10 days of progress and wonders if he might actually be capable of landing a hit. A plan to strike while the old man is distracted flashes through his mind, and he charges forward the moment Lai Trung turns his back. Lai Trung remains unbothered and questions the boy's attempt at a preemptive strike before stomping his foot to release a surge of magical power. Mocking Vo T-Letter-1-EADN's confidence after only 10 days of training, Lai Trung leisurely raises his wooden stick to meet the youth's determined attack. Vo T-Letter-1-EADN's sharp blade strikes the hard wood, but he is shocked to find that it feels like hitting solid steel without leaving even a single scratch. As Vo T-Letter-1-EADN pours all his strength into the blow, Lai Trung tells him to grit his teeth, leaving the confused youth to repeat the instruction. The old man wears a dangerous smile as he channels spiritual energy into the wood, causing Vo T-Letter-1-EADN's eyes to widen at the sudden surge of power. Vo T-Letter-1-EADN struggles to identify the overwhelming force that feels like a powerful current, his face dripping with sweat under the pressure of Lai Trung's strength. Lai Trung soon knocks Vo T-Letter-1-EADN backward into the smoky forest, leaving the youth gasping and retching on the grass after the brief clash. Holding the stick high, Lai Trung asks how it felt to experience internal power, while a frustrated Vo T-Letter-1-EADN wipes his mouth and calls the situation absurd. Vo T-Letter-1-EADN questions if the person with the most internal energy is always the strongest, a sentiment that Lai Trung finds somewhat agreeable as he laughs. Li Zhang rests a wooden stick on his shoulder and explains that he avoids direct clashes of power because his internal energy is limited. He questions why Vo Tan is so impatient, reminding him that martial arts are complex and noting his background as a mere physician. Li Zhang wonders if Vo Tan seeks revenge, while Vo Tan stands up dejectedly, recalling the promise to become a top-tier master. Vo Tan worries his current internal energy is insufficient for success, prompting Li Zhang to strike him on the head with his stick. Li Zhang points the stick at Vo Tan and sternly teaches him that one can become a master even with limited energy and simple techniques. Li Zhang notices Vo Tan's surprise and encourages his approach, suggesting they try again without using internal power this time. Vo Tan wipes away his sweat and stares determinedly at the old man, raising his sword as his resolve begins to burn. Votan plants his feet and leaps toward Li Zhang with his sword raised high, vowing revenge as Li Zhang prepares to block the strike. Votan feels a brief moment of triumph, but Li Zhang suddenly maneuvers past him and strikes his forehead with incredible speed. Votan drops his sword and collapses in exhaustion as Li Zhang laughs, noting that Votan would have died 3 times already without internal energy. Squatting down to observe him, Li Zhang remarks that Votan's energy accumulation is slow and his body is not built for explosive power. Votan listens intently as Li Zhang gestures broadly, preparing to highlight the young man's unique strengths. Li Zhang explains that Votan has a keen sense for internal energy and, despite his third-rate swordsmanship, managed to infuse his blade with power. Li Zhang encourages him to keep practicing and praises his progress over the last 10 days, leaving Votan trembling with emotion. Votan asks with excitement if he has finally become a second-rate martial artist, but Li Zhang scolds him for his sudden arrogance. Votan feels a surge of determination, but both men suddenly sense a nearby presence which Li Zhang identifies as a person. The two hide behind the bushes to observe a man named Kak Jioi, who remains unaware that he is being watched. Votan notices the 3 knots on the man's belt, causing Li Zhang to wonder why a branch leader has appeared in the mountains. Votan is stunned to realize that a branch leader is equivalent to a top-tier master. Votan asks about the plague, and Kak Jioi greets them warmly, confirming that a disease is indeed spreading through the village. Kak Jioi, the sub-branch leader of Chu Ap village, considers it a rare blessing that the physicians agreed to accompany him to find medical help for his dying people. Votan finds it hard to understand how a 2-hour journey could take half a day, prompting a confused Kak Jioi to scratch his head and offer an explanation while gesturing forward. Kak Jioi explains that he has never left Chu Ap village in his life, while Votan notes his luck in remaining uninfected as the village head sadly recounts how the plague weakened everyone a month ago. What was initially dismissed as a common spring cough soon spread to half the village, claiming the lives of approximately 20 people. Amidst the smoke and fire, men carry the deceased for burial as Kak Jioi looks back with deep regret while adjusting the bag around his neck. Despite the dark circles under his eyes from exhaustion, Kak Jioi admits he once considered fleeing the plague, but could not bring himself to abandon the land where he has lived his entire life. Unable to leave the villagers behind, Kak Jioi and his master chose to stay and provide whatever medical assistance they could to the suffering patient. They initially worked with the village physician until medicinal supplies ran low, leading Kak Jioi to recall his master's final instructions before heading into the mountains to gather more herbs. His master had promised to return in a few days with medicine, but as the deadline passed without any sign of him, a worried Kak Jioi hopes the delay is merely due to the rarity of the herbs. Shifting from sorrow to a brief moment of gratitude, Kak Jioi bows and thanks the physicians for their presence, which has finally brought some clarity to their difficult journey. Votan and Lai Trung arrive at the village and are weakly invited inside by Hong Keen, the village protector, who opens his door to welcome them. As the village protector leads them inside, Votan follows and discovers a young boy lying on a thin white cloth, drenched in sweat and covered in severe pustules. Votan kneels to examine the boy's condition, and then stares intently at the sticky residue left on his own hand after releasing the child's arm. With furrowed brows and wide eyes, Votan notes the boy's sticky sweat, weak pulse, and the peculiar symptom of hot ears despite cold hands, indicating internal heat rising to the head. Votan asks if the child has vomited, and the man confirms the symptom along with headaches and dizziness, while Lai Trung observes the examination with a thoughtful expression. Votan identifies the symptoms of damp heat, a rapid pulse, and vomiting as signs of a plague, prompting the concerned man to ask for further clarification. When asked for the specific name of the illness and its cure, Votan solemnly explains that while it resembles summer heat toxin, it lacks certain defining characteristics. Noting the absence of a specific pungent odor, Votan warns that if left untreated, the internal heat will surge to the brain and cause permanent damage. To prevent blindness or mental impairment, he recommends acupuncture on specific pressure points and a medicinal regimen including ophiophagon, trichosanthe seeds, platycodon, and fritillaria. Lai Trung strokes his beard with a proud smile, noting that Votan has clearly mastered the inner canon before encouraging him to perform the acupuncture himself. Votan stands in disbelief at what he has just heard before reaching into his long bag to retrieve a sharp acupuncture needle. With trembling lips, he holds the needle in one hand and the boy's leg in the other, hesitating to strike the Enham app acupoint since he has never practiced the art before. Li Zhang approaches and places 2 fingers on Vo Tan's hand to transfer spiritual energy, explaining that the breathing techniques he taught were meant for more than just martial arts. He tells Vo Tan that a physician with such refined internal energy perception is truly blessed, and Vo Tan watches with hope as Li Zhang's power envelops them both. Vo Tan notices a red aura on the boy's forehead and realizes his master's energy is guiding his own, making the internal pathways as clear as pebbles in a stream. He can see everything vividly, including the presence of malicious energy, until Li Zhang withdraws his hand and asks if he felt the killing intent. Vo Tan confirms he did and follows the instruction to strike with the needle, first piercing the boy's leg and then gently applying energy to his lower chest. Li Zhang watches closely as Vo Tan continues to place needles on the boy's head, only stopping to wipe the heavy sweat from his own brow once he is finished. Vo Tan keeps his eyes fixed on the boy, whose body begins to tremble as his breathing grows rapid, causing the young man to become visibly tense. The boy cries out and exhales a cloud of red mist, much to Vo Tan's relief as the child's breathing finally steadies and he falls into a deep sleep. A heavy silence falls over the room as everyone watches the boy, and Vo Tan exhales a long sigh of relief before noticing Li Zhang's hand resting on his shoulder. Li Zhang smiles and tells Vo Tan that he has learned a great deal today, praising the young man's visible effort and dedication. He remarks that after many trials, Vo Tan finally looks like a true physician, while outside, a mysterious dark figure is seen walking away into the distance. As a local man leads them away, he explains how their village physician spent his entire fortune on expensive medicines to save the people from a plague. The man describes how the physician gave all his money to a merchant, prompting the villagers to pool their own resources in anticipation of the merchant's return. Vo Tan is stunned to hear that medicine merchants rarely visit such a remote mountain valley, making the physician's sacrifice even more desperate. The man explains that the physician eventually ventured into the mountains alone to find herbs, admitting he once despised a local named Chu Sun for being a loafer. He laughs and admits that if Chu Sun had not brought the physician back this time, his son would have surely perished. His anger fades as he thinks of his recovering child, and he points toward an empty house that he offers to the 2 travelers for their stay. After showing them the way and wishing them a peaceful night's rest, the man departs, leaving Vo Tan and Li Zhang to enter the wooden house. Lai Trung's gaze lingers on an old cabinet before shifting toward a table illuminated by the faint light filtering in from outside. Noticing a doll lying on the floor at his feet, Lai Trung frowns with suspicion and inspects it closely before picking it up as Vo Tan sets his bags on the bed and asks a question. Vo Tan remarks on what a kind physician this must be, startling Lai Trung, who asks if he is referring to the local doctor. Vo Tan gestures around in admiration, expressing his eagerness to meet the doctor and wondering how such a plague could break out in a place where both the physician and the residents are so kind-hearted. Pointing out the abundance of food and gifts piled nearby, Lai Trung observes the delicious meal laid out and reminds his companion to eat only what is necessary. Lai Trung instructs him to return what remains when they leave to avoid being a burden, and though Vo Tan agrees, he looks at the older man with a questioning gaze. When asked about the nature of the plague, Lai Trung pours water into a cup and somberly explains that while similar illnesses exist, this one remains unclear and may be something he has never encountered before. Vo Tan is left speechless with shock, wondering if there could truly be a disease in this world that even one of the 3 great physicians does not recognize. Lai Trung narrows his eyes slightly and gives a calm, steady nod in response. Vo Tan reaches out to accept a cup of water as Li Trung reflects on how the more one learns, the more one realizes how much remains unknown. Li Trung explains that he is not an all-knowing physician and that he only travels the world because there are still many illnesses he has yet to encounter. Vo Tan asks if there was ever a disease the master could not cure, to which Li Trung thoughtfully replies that there was one he can treat now, but it is far too late. Vo Tan ponders the meaning of it being too late and looks out the window, his expression darkening as the sound of distant weeping reaches his ears. The sound of mourning echoes through the houses and spreads across the entire village at the foot of the mountain, leaving Vo Tan deep in thought. Votan feels a sense of regret while thinking of the sick child, realizing that the illness could have been cured if only its name had been known sooner. As Votan sits in somber silence, Lee Trung looks at a doll and reveals the painful memory of losing his own wife and daughter to that very same disease. Lee Trung recalls how they both suddenly fell ill with high fevers and red rashes, prompting him to seek out the most famous physicians in the neighboring area. Despite his efforts, the doctors found no cure, and his wife and child passed away while he was still away searching for someone who could help them. The entire tragedy unfolded in just 4 days, leading Votan to sit with his hands clasped in deep sympathy for his master's loss. Lee Trung dismisses the condolences with a touch of irony, suggesting that the story is not as tragic as it seems before taking a sip from his cup. He remembers standing outside his home after his family was gone, remarking that the events following their deaths were almost absurd enough to cause laughter. After a period of intense grief, Lee Trung left his home and began to wander aimlessly as if driven by a restless spirit. 10 days later, he arrived at a small village that should have been only a day's journey away, having taken a long and winding path much like a certain young man. He vividly remembers meeting an old village doctor whose rat-like appearance and large front teeth did not inspire any professional confidence. With a faint glimmer of hope, Lee Trung described his family's symptoms to the scruffy old man and waited for his reaction. The old doctor claimed that for a mere 5 coins, a simple medicine taken at the right time would have cured the illness without any complication. Lee Trung reflects on the heavy irony, noting that he had more than enough silver at the time to provide for his daughter's future many times over. Looking at the doll in the dim light, Lee Trung offers a faint smile and tells Votan that his family did not perish due to a lack of wealth. Their deaths were not caused by a lack of medicine or skill, but simply because one doctor possessed the knowledge that the others lacked. Lee Trung explains that he became a physician solely to gather all the world's medical knowledge before finishing his drink in one gulp. 30 years have passed, and he can no longer even recall the faces of his wife and children, prompting Votan to turn toward the window in silence. Votan gazes out at the sunset over the village at the foot of the massive mountain, his heart filled with a growing sense of unease. His master's laughter sounds like a mournful cry, and the next day, Votan tells the old man he will search the village for the source of the plague. Lee Trung agrees to investigate separately and warns Votan that his life will be in danger if anyone catches him being lazy. Votan reassures his master and later stands by the pig pen, watching a pig look up as he observes the animals in thought. After inspecting the well, Votan enters a cellar to search for clues before pointing his thumb at the house behind him. He asks if the scholar's house was truly the first place where the disease appeared, and Hong Keen confirms that it was. A mysterious purple aura reveals the plague's 2 opposing extremes of water and fire, including a foul energy that chills the body. Another foul energy causes a boiling fever, and though symptoms differ, both originate from dark, damp, and putrid places. Finding no foul energy in the pens, wells, or cellars, Votan focuses his mind, knowing a plague must have a single point of origin from which it spreads. After thinking, he asks if the scholar fell ill first, and after Hong Keen confirms the sequence, Kat Jioi points upward to describe the layout. He explains that the western side was hit first, and children were infected before adults, leaving Votan with only vague clues. Votan asks about the differences between the western and eastern parts of the village, certain there is a reason the outbreak began there. Kat Jioi mentions hearing that the east has strong yang energy while the west is full of yin, but Votan immediately disagreed. Votan notes that he and the old man saw no signs of the plague on the road from the west and wonders why the children were affected first. Closing his eyes, he considers that children often play together, and Kat Jioi mentions a place where they frequently gather. Kat Jioi mentions a small stream in the west, causing Votan's face to tense as he wonders if the water is the cause. Noting that the eastern well is clear, he asks the village chief if it is always as dry as it appears now. Hong Keen explains the well only dries up during spring droughts, and Votan continues his investigation, seemingly having found a clue. Votan realizes the outbreak coincided with the well drying up, a theory the old man firmly supports as Votan breaks into a sweat while deducing that the entire village must have switched to stream water once the eastern well failed. This explains why the western residents and children fell ill first, as they were already using the water from the clear stream that flows through the forest. Votan squats down and touches the earth, his eyes fixed on the clear water where gentle light filters through to reveal the fine sand on the bottom. He reaches into the water with a look of confusion, finding nothing suspicious about its clarity or scent, yet he remains convinced that the stream is the source of the problem. Realizing there is only one way to be sure, he scoops up a handful of water while Kak Jioi and Hong Keen watch nervously, then sits cross-legged and closes his eye. He raises his hands to channel his spiritual energy, and as a magical aura envelops him, his companions look at each other in utter confusion. Sensing his own internal organs, Votan detects a strange red gas in his gut and realizes it is the same evil energy found in the sick child, prompting him to stand up abruptly. With a bright smile, Votan points into the distance to signal that he has found a clue, and the group begins following the stream as a light breeze whispers through the tree. Kak Jioi helps the old man across the water while Votan and Hong Keen catch their breath, but Votan suddenly stops and looks toward the heights. Startled by a sudden realization, Votan asks if he is the only one who can smell the strange scent, but Kak Jioi confirms that he senses it as well. The odor has been growing stronger for some time, and as Votan gazes at the misty mountains in the distance, he notes that they are finally getting close. As they push further into the forest, Votan stops with clenched fists and a pale face, coughing into his hand as he realizes the dead trees indicate the source of the disease is nearby. Toxic air swirls around the trees as the group struggles forward, and Votan's eyes widen when he spots something unusual ahead. Covering his nose, Votan observes the ground rotting from the toxic fumes and struggles to keep his footing on the decaying earth. He carefully navigates the treacherous terrain, spreading his arms for balance while keeping his eyes fixed on the ground below. His face tenses with sweat, and his brow furrows as he senses something significant hidden deep beneath the surface. In Chapter 6, an old yellow cabinet and white ceramic jars appear in the peaceful light of a room where the storage of medicinal herbs often involves the remnants of life. A bowl of medicine sits among crushed herbs, representing the end of life for various plants or perhaps even animals. Despite the nature of the ingredients, the apothecary always carries a comforting and pleasant aroma that brings a smile to Votan's face as he handles the herbs. He gazes out the window, reflecting on his long-standing fondness for that scent, before turning his attention to the many medicine pouches hanging throughout the room. Death holds the key to life and scent can bring one back, yet Votan frowns and grips a wooden stake, thrusting it deep into the earth. He gazes at the withered animal carcasses in the pit, but finds only the faint scent of death, which serves only to breed more demise. Wondering who is responsible and why, Kak Jioi and Hong Keen assist Votan, with Hong Keen panting as he suggests moving the remains away from the stream. Kak Jioi watches Hong Keen descend into the large pit they have dug, where he holds up a piece of an animal carcass to show his master. Hong Keen deduces that someone chopped the animals up and buried them, while Votan thoughtfully observes the toxic remains that cause illness with just a single breath. A rotting skull infested with centipedes lies beneath the soil, harboring a corpse poison that kills slowly, revealing the culprit's cruel expertise and the village's tragic fate. Votan trembles as he realizes this plot coincides perfectly with the wells running dry, causing him to narrow his eyes and grip his wooden stake in silent fury. Realizing the goal is total destruction, Votan spins around at a sudden sound as heavy footsteps startle the group and reveal the physician holding a knife and a filthy bag. The physician pulls down his mask and growls in anger, demanding to know why they are interfering with the medicinal concoction he worked so hard to cultivate. Hong Keen clenches his fist in a rage as he realizes the culprit is Physician Deem, while Votan looks at the old man in utter shock. Votan glares at the physician with a face contorted by fury, realizing the man fully understood the effects of corpse poison and the village's vulnerabilities. It becomes clear that the physician is the culprit who profited from the spreading plague, hiding an incomparable cruelty behind a facade of kindness. A demon in human skin, he merely disguised himself as a gentle healer while acting like a greedy pig to drain the village of its resources. Driven by insatiable greed, the physician sought to destroy the entire Ku Nuyen village in one move, prompting a trembling Vo Tan to vow his death as Hong Keen steps forward. Hong Keen confirms the man's guilt, shouting that he sowed the disease just to pretend to cure it, yet the physician remains unfazed by the accusation. The physician curls his lips into a fierce smile and admits he only feigned virtue to secure his final share of the profit. Hong Keen growls in fury and roars about the cost in human lives before hurling a goat head at the physician, which shatters upon impact. The physician glares and retreats a few steps as two armed men move to protect him, indifferently questioning why he should care about those who die. He adds that his only concern is the destruction of his hard work, threatening that they will pay with their lives sooner or later. With a malicious glint in his eyes, the physician grins and reveals his plan to throw their corpses into the pit as he looks contemptuously at the defiant Hong Keen. Hong Keen trembles before the two muscular men but glares at them, calling them animals as physician Ring's henchmen look on in confusion. The henchmen notice the 3 knots on Hong Keen's belt as he channels his energy into his wooden staff, identifying himself as a guardian of the beggar gang. The realization that a guardian is present shocks the henchmen, while Hong Keen's group remains cautious as the 2 thugs turn toward physician Ring. One of the men shouts at physician Ring, demanding to know why a beggar gang guardian is there when they were told the targets were weak. Physician Ring avoids the question in confusion while Hong Keen stomps the ground and grips his staff, preparing to issue a command. Hong Keen takes a combat stance and announces he will count to 10, declaring that only physician Ring is destined to die by his staff. He expresses his desire to avoid further bloodshed in the village, and firmly tells the others to make the right choice despite his own trembling. Vo Tan watches as Hong Keen begins counting, realizing that a single shout was enough to intimidate the enemy before Kak Jioi whispers to him from behind. Kak Jioi tells Vo Tan he must flee immediately, and offers to throw him across the stream so he can escape. He instructs Vo Tan to run as fast as possible to alert the village, while Hong Keen begins to radiate a powerful aura. As Hong Keen counts to 2, Kak Jioi pleads with Vo Tan to take on the responsibility of helping the village, leaving Vo Tan deeply confused. Vo Tan questions why they cannot easily win if they are a branch leader and a guardian at the Supreme Realm, stunned by the mention of such a high rank. After observing Hong Keen's movements, Vo Tan realizes the truth about their strength while Kak Jioi glares at the physician's men. Kak Jioi and his master prepare for battle as physician Ring pushes his henchmen forward, urging them to attack the 2 beggars and the doctor. Hong Keen counts to 4 and asks if they truly wish to oppose the entire village, while Vo Tan realizes the old beggar is prepared to fight to the death. Vo Tan suggests they all escape together, noting that the rival physician is a true master of the Supreme Realm who would be a threat to the village. Hong Keen counts to 5 as Kak Jioi lifts Vo Tan up, explaining that they cannot protect him while attempting to flee from such a foe. Kak Jioi asks Vo Tan to protect the village alongside the other physician, prompting Vo Tan to remember his childhood training with Hong Keen. Hong Keen counts to 6, reflecting on a lifetime of begging and the debt of gratitude they owe to the villagers who fed them. Kak Jioi remembers his master's lesson about fighting for the people when the time comes, as Hong Keen counts to 7 while the henchmen watch warily. Realizing that running away would not erase his gambling debts, the man decided to kill, knowing life only happened once, while the official's brow furrowed as his henchmen charged. Deciding to take a desperate gamble, Jai Jioi gritted his teeth and hoisted Vo Tan into the air as Hong Keen watched the 2 attackers sent by the official. Jai Jioi used all his strength to hurl Vo Tan backward and urged him to flee, while the henchmen lunged at Hong Keen with their weapons as Vo Tan watched in a daze. Vo Tan wondered if he should help since the enemies did not seem particularly strong, watching as Jai Jioi and Hong Keen joined forces with an unyielding spirit. Hong Keen stood firm, and Vo Tan realized that they might actually win if they fought together, his brow furrowing as he cast a fiery gaze toward the official's men. A sharp blade suddenly slashed toward him as the man with the topknot charged directly at Vo Tan, who widened his eyes in terror and braced for the impending pain. Jai Jioi lunged forward and tackled the attacker, allowing Vo Tan to successfully cross the stream before Vo Tan turned and fled deep into the forest. Jai Jioi smiled with satisfaction as Vo Tan ran deeper into the woods, pushing himself to the limit and justifying his escape as simply following the task entrusted to him. Vo Tan accelerated to save Ku and Gayat village, but the memory of the pit haunted him as he realized he was running away while Ji Jioi and Hong Keen faced death. He feared their bodies would be torn to pieces and felt powerless as a mere novice, eventually coming to a halt as his strength began to fail him. Leaning on his thighs and panting heavily in the dim light filtering through the leaves, he lamented that a supreme master would never have fled from such a fight. The image of Lai Trung's back flashed through his mind as sweat poured down his face, and in the darkness, Ji Jioi and Hong Keen appeared standing alongside Lai Trung. Though filled with panic, he realized that Hong Keen had chosen to stay despite not being a supreme master, and he hung his head in the forest, consumed by self-reproach. His feet trembled uncontrollably until he bit his lip and turned back with determination, his heavy breathing echoing through the forest as he sprinted forward with all his might. With clenched fists and a resolute gaze fixed on the distance, Votan ran through his sweat and labored breathing toward the source of light ahead of him. He recalled a time when he had helped a bullied child and was called a fool, remembering that the pride he felt then had been far greater than the physical pain of the beating. It felt as though he were a true martial arts master standing against injustice, yet he bit his lip and silently prayed that the path ahead of him would be much longer. He secretly wished the battle would be over by the time he arrived, but he pushed those cowardly thoughts aside and continued running as the sounds of combat reached his ears. Votan realized that if he did not find the courage to step out of his shell now, his entire life would be spent running away, and he stopped to see Ji Jioi still gripping his staff. Hong Keen stood his ground with clenched fists in a defensive stance while Votan watched from the grass, worrying about the severe injuries they had sustained. Kok G I letter 1 EDB I and H letter 1 ED3 and G K I letter 1 EC7 N are each locked in combat with an opponent, both gasping for breath but refusing to give up despite their exhaustion. Kok G I letter 1 EDB I glares at the man before him, while the top-knot man grins wickedly, raising his sword high before charging straight at him. Retreating to avoid the strike, Kok G I letter 1 EDB I raises his wooden staff to block the heavy blade while shouting a defiant cry against evil. Kok G I letter 1 EDB I agilely parries every blow from the top-knot man, who continues to swing his sword relentlessly at him. Gritting his teeth in a desperate struggle, Kok G I letter 1 EDB I ducks to avoid a fatal slash from the top-knot man as sweat pours off him like rain. The top-knot man pulls his sword back for another strike, marveling at the beggar's endurance before swinging his blade toward Kok G I letter 1 EDB I again. The enemy mocks Kok G I letter 1 EDB I's agility as the tip of the blade grazes his leg, causing a spray of red blood to splatter. Kok G I letter 1 EDB I uses his wooden staff to block a fierce strike while nearby. H letter 1 ED3 and GK I letter 1 EC7 N calls out in worry as he sees his disciple pinned to the ground. Calling him Chu San, the old man urges him to stay sharp and stand up, but a headband-wearing man swings an axe at H letter 1 ED3 and GK I letter 1 EC7 NS face during the distraction. H letter 1 ED3 and GK I letter 1 EC7 N narrowly avoids the vicious blow by ducking, as his opponent mocks his stubbornness and tells him to stop worrying about others. Exhausted and struggling to breathe, H letter 1 ED3 and GK I letter 1 EC7 N declares that even crawling through filth is better than being trash like his enemy. The enemy gestures toward Kok G I letter 1 EDB I and points his axe at H letter 1 ED3 and GK I letter 1 EC7 N, mockingly stating that both their deaths have already been decided. The headband man taunts the exhausted old man, asking if he truly wants to watch his disciple be hacked into pieces and turned into fertilizer. Glancing at his fallen staff and then at his foe, H letter 1 ED3 and GK I letter 1 EC7 N watches Kok G I letter 1 EDB I struggle against the top-knot man and refuses to give up, forcing himself to stand. Moving like a flash toward his wooden staff, the old man roars his refusal to surrender as the headband man raises his axe to intercept him. The headband man prepares a fatal blow to stop the old man from reaching the staff, chasing after H letter 1 ED3 and GK I letter 1 EC7 N with a crazed, murderous intent. While the old man carefully observes his opponent's movements, Kok G I letter 1 EDB I leans aside to parry another slash from the top-knot man. Kok G I letter 1 EDB I glances toward H letter 1 ED3 and GK I letter 1 EC7 NS fight as the old man reaches down to grab a handful of dirt, while Kok G I letter 1 EDB I kicks the top-knot man's cap. Covered in sweat but filled with determination, H letter 1 ED3 and GK I letter 1 EC7 N recalls a memory of watching the sunset with a young cock G.I. letter 1 EDBI before turning back with the dirt. The old man flings the dirt at the headband man and lunges at him, prompting the enemy to raise his axe and mockingly welcome his death. Kak Jioi freezes upon hearing Hong Keen's scream and turns back in panic to see an axe buried in the old man's back as blood sprays everywhere. Hong Keen clings tightly to the head-wrapped man who pulls the axe out and causes the old man to shriek in agony. Kak Jioi stands paralyzed by the screams while the head-wrapped man grinds his teeth in fury and repeatedly stabs the axe into Hong Keen's back. Hong Keen struggles to tell the man to let go and signals to Kak Jioi that the time has finally come to act. Spitting out mouthfuls of blood, Hong Keen urges Kak Jioi to repay his debts, prompting the young man to hurl his wooden staff at the head-wrapped assailant. Hong Keen uses his remaining strength to restrain his attacker, while the man with the topknot charges at Kak Jioi with his sword drawn. Suddenly, a stone strikes the topknot man in the face as Vo-Tan stands in the distance, frowning while aiming another large rock. The topknot man falls back with a swollen face while cursing the doctor, just as Kak Jioi delivers a fatal blow to the head-wrapped man's skull. The battlefield becomes suffocatingly tense before both Hong Keen and the head-wrapped man lose consciousness and collapse to the ground. Vo-Tan looks at Kak Jioi leaning on his staff but finds himself unable to speak until the topknot man calls out to him with venom. Raising his sword toward Vo-Tan, the man mocks him for returning to face death instead of cherishing his escape. The topknot man sprints toward Vo-Tan and vows to hack him to pieces as he brings his blade down for the kill. Vo-Tan pales and braces for the impact with wide eyes, only to be saved when Lai Trung suddenly appears and blocks the strike with his own sword. Lai Trung turns to ask if Vo-Tan traveled all this way just for medicine, leaving the young man stunned to see the old master. Amidst the decaying forest floor, Kak Jioi cradles Hong Keen's body in his lap and weeps while Lai Trung observes the tragic scene in silence. After observing the situation, Lai Trung asks if these men were the ones who started the plague, but Vo-Tan immediately denies it. Vo-Tan points angrily at the physician and identifies him as the true mastermind, just as Lai Trung appears behind the villain. Lai Trung grabs the physician's head and shoves him to the ground, demanding to know if he was truly the one who created the disease. When Lai Trung asks for a motive, Vo-Tan glares at the physician and explains that the man's only motivation was greed. Vo-Tan reveals that the physician spread the plague everywhere just for profit, leaving the man to cower and beg for his life after being kicked. Lai Trung calmly pushes Vo-Tan back to continue questioning the physician, while Vo-Tan looks on in surprise and wonders about the man's true objective. The physician kneels at Lai Trung's feet and begs for mercy, sensing that the official knows his secrets and offering a deal in exchange for his life. He pleads for survival, promising to provide a rare spiritual medicine far superior to anything found within Thon True Village. Trembling, he asks if they have heard of the black sparrow herb, a flower that blooms in the darkness by absorbing the yin energy of chaotic times. Though slightly less potent than the 10,000-year snow ginseng, it is equally famous for growing upon the withered remains of the fallen. Referring to it as the flower of heroes, the physician points into the distance and offers the herb to the warriors in exchange for his life. Vo-Tan and Lai Trung grow tense as the physician gestures toward a nearby cave, emitting a faint, eerie purple glow. A striking purple flower comes into view, and Vo-Tan exclaims in disbelief upon realizing it truly is the legendary black sparrow herb. Vo-Tan approaches the physician with a threatening fist, demanding to know why he caused such tragedy if he intended to surrender the herb all along. Lai Trung places a hand on Vo-Tan's shoulder to calm him, sensing the physician's ulterior motive and stating that this is not a simple plea for mercy. The physician is startled as Lai Trung exposes his scheme, noting that any ordinary person who touches the herb will have their spiritual energy drained until they die. The man trembles as Lai Trung reveals that the black sparrow herb is nurtured by death, which explains why he had been collecting corpses. If the villagers were to perish, their bodies would serve as nourishment for the herb, a fate the physician intended for Lai Trung and Vo-Tan as well. Glancing at Kak Jioi weeping over Hong Keen's cold body, Lai Trung accuses the physician of stalling for time to devise another wicked plot. He suspects the physician planned to poison them during the harvesting process, but the man desperately strikes the ground and denies the accusation. The physician claims the herb is difficult to prepare and he truly intended to process it for them, but Lai Trung merely offers a sharp, mocking smile. Lai Trung remarks that the mountain doctor possesses surprisingly deep knowledge, to which the pale man forced a smile and dismissed it as trivial skill. Lai Trung reaches out to pluck the purple flower with indifference, carefully observing it while the physician watches in absolute shock. Lai Trung declares that he is no ordinary man, leaving the sweating physician breathless as he warns that touching the herb with bare hands is fatal. Before the physician can finish his sentence, Lai Trung's blade flashes through the air, and the man's head falls onto the cold ground. Lai Trung gazes at the flower in his hand and arrogantly declares that he will take responsibility for his own life and death, as a voice echoes through the forest mocking the constant appearance of worthless quacks. Lai Trung expresses his irritation, remarking that those who learn a bit of medicine often mistakenly believe they are true healers when they are actually just trash, while Vo Tan cautiously approaches to check on him. Vo Tan asks the old man if he is all right, prompting Lai Trung to turn back with a scoff and ask if the boy truly believes his reputation was merely obtained through gambling. Before departing, Lai Trung instructs Vo Tan to take the red coxcomb and retreat, while he absorbs the toxic energy from the corpse and the black crow herb. Vo Tan obediently complies and retreats with Cat Jioi while keeping a watchful eye on Lai Trung, who then sits on the ground and begins to circulate his internal energy. Vo Tan watches in silent amazement as Lai Trung generates powerful currents of energy, sensing a shift in the surrounding atmosphere. Looking down at the ground, Vo Tan notices plumes of purple gas being rapidly drawn in at a visible speed, causing him to turn his head in realization. Vo Tan can hardly believe his eyes as the toxic gas is absorbed and Lai Trung's power intensifies, forcing the young man to lean back and shield himself from the overwhelming pressure. The terrifying toxic fumes swirl around the seated Lai Trung until the poison within the monster's corpse is completely drained and dried up. Having witnessed the entire scene from a distance, Vo Tan can still easily feel the immense pressure radiating from that spot. After some time, the toxic clouds slowly dissipate to reveal Lai Trung still sitting calmly in his original position behind the thick mist. Vo Tan hesitantly asks if the process is finished, only for Lai Trung to surprise him by holding out the flower and stating that this level of mastery is required to truly circulate one's energy. Lai Trung generously offers the flower to Vo Tan, explaining that he has refined it with his superior energy to remove all toxins, while the young man can only nod in silent gratitude. Lai Trung proudly adds that Vo Tan has earned this by uncovering the quack's conspiracy, leaving the young man confused about what he means by being worthy. Lai Trung merely smirks and says that absorbing the poison is enough for him, while Vo Tan suddenly falls into deep thought. After glancing back at the trembling Cat Jioi and reflecting on the situation, Vo Tan attempts to return the gift, claiming he does not deserve such an honor. He guiltily explains that he had initially run away and only returned to throw a stone because he was afraid of being labeled a coward. Lai Trung shows no intention of blaming him and instead points toward Cat Jioi, who is standing behind the young man. Lai Trung notes that the way the other person looks at him proves his worth, remarking that running away and then choosing to return is far more difficult than facing a threat from the start. He explains that one only finds true worth by facing their duties and accepting their mistakes, as only those who truly abandon their responsibilities are cowards. Before leaving, the elder turned back to remark that one could flee as many times as they wished, provided they returned to their post when the final moment arrived. He emphasized that not abandoning one's duty was sufficient, leaving Wu Jin wide-eyed as he realized he had just received a profound life lesson. With the flower still held firmly in Wu Jin's hand, Li Chang sighed wearily and wondered if he had imparted too much worldly wisdom at once. Fearing the lesson was too deep for the boy to grasp, Li Chang turned back upon hearing coughing and asked if Wu Jin had already consumed the medicine. When Wu Jin confirmed he had, a shocked Li Chang demanded to know why he ate it so soon, while the confused youth thought he had been told to do so. Wu Jin innocently pointed out that he was told there were no side effects, but his agonizing screams soon began to echo through the sky. Amidst Wu Jin's cries of grievance, Li Chang sighed in exasperation at the boy's recklessness in swallowing a potent elixir without first mastering the cultivation technique. As Wu Jin trembled in pain and explained he thought he had to eat it immediately, Li Chang gritted his teeth and scolded him for ignoring the instructions of the Black Tortoise divine art. Li Chang reminded him to stand firm and breathe correctly while lamenting the difficult situation, leaving the now panicked Wu Jin desperate for guidance. Wu Jin begged for the instructions to be repeated, causing Li Chang to marvel at how such a bright student could occasionally be so foolish as they continued their journey. The elder carefully explained how to guide internal energy through the spleen meridian while walking, ensuring that each step made full contact with the ground at a slow pace. He instructed Wu Jin to combine energy from the lower body and lungs to form an axis connecting the Shenzhou, Zhejiang, and Yaoyongyuan acupoints as the foundation of the technique. Using that unchanging axis to channel the power of the Black Star Elixir, Li Chang emphasized the need for extreme caution, to which Wu Jin responded with sudden confidence. Wu Jin claimed to have understood the instructions perfectly and insisted that he was already performing the technique correctly. Li Chang scolds Wu Jin to stop arguing and focus, as Wu Jin's body begins to transform and sweat pours down his face. His legs wobble as if he is about to collapse, but after a long moment he exhales in relief, drawing Li Chang's attention. Wu Jin steps forward with newfound stability and a surge of intense energy radiating from his body. Li Chang is pleased, thinking Wu Jin's internal energy will stabilize before they reach the village while considering his future potential. Wu Jin marvels at the changes in his body, but his next remark causes Li Chang's expression to darken instantly. When Wu Jin praises the incredible power of the Black Star medicine, Li Chang angrily retorts that he has barely scratched the surface. Li Chang explains that full absorption takes time and orders him to practice the Black Tortoise divine art, leaving Wu Jin pale with fear. Seeing Wu Jin's recovery, Li Chang tells him to drag one of the bodies, but Wu Jin immediately feigns a stomach ache to avoid the work. As they lead the way with Gak Jai following behind, the villagers watch the approaching group with bewildered expressions. Wu Jin addresses the crowd, explaining that the plague will vanish and they will recover within 3 days if they take the medicine. He announces that the masterminds have been defeated by the duo, prompting the villagers to cheer and applaud enthusiastically. While the crowd celebrates around Li Chang and Wu Jin, Gak Jai remains somber, and Li Chang notices something unusual about his demeanor. Li Chang watches as Gak Jai bows respectfully in the sunlight, while the joyful villagers completely ignore his presence. Gak Jai walks away alone, pausing briefly to look at the remains of the fallen before continuing his solitary journey. Time passes from the golden hues of sunset into a new day at their familiar residence. Early the next morning, Wu Jin practices his forms with a wooden branch, focusing intently on perfecting every single movement. As Wu Jin pauses to wonder how the old man performed his techniques, he is suddenly struck by a heavy kick. Li Chang kicks him to the ground, scolding him for getting dust in the medicine and questioning his worthiness to learn swordplay. Li Chang orders him to pack for a long journey, but Wu Jin is confused as to why they are leaving while patients still need care. Wu Jin secretly hopes to stay longer to enjoy the company of the local girls and bask in his reputation as a hero for a few more days. Lai Trung quickly brings Vo Tan back to reality by explaining that he never intended to visit the village and only stopped because of Hong Kat Tone requests. Trung Vo calmly suggests that Hong Kat Ki is likely burying Ma Tone Ki and will probably end up starving somewhere as usual. Vo Tan finds it hard to understand how a hero could starve, reflecting that the life of a beggar disciple changes once they have taken a life. Even with a just cause, a beggar who once relied on charity is no longer seen as a simple beggar after killing a martial arts master. Vo Tan looks down as his mood darkens, and the two continue to discuss the weight of the situation for a while longer. When asked about Hong Kat Ki's future, Lai Trung gazes at the sky and remarks that the choice is his, as killing always carries such consequences. As the time comes for them to depart, the villagers gather to see them off, and Vo Tan reluctantly begins his journey. The two travel along the trail day after day, maintaining a steady pace without exchanging a single word. Vo Tan suddenly notices a cemetery ahead and stares in disbelief until Lai Trung spots their destination and calls out to him. They find a grave marked by 2 wooden sticks and approach it in silence to pay their respects to the deceased. As they bow together, Vo Tan glances over and senses something unusual in Lai Trung's demeanor. Amidst the silence, Kak Jioi approaches and bows to them, expressing his deep gratitude and wishing them a safe journey ahead. Vo Tan rushes toward him, concerned that he has been there since the previous night without any food or water. Vo Tan kindly offers him some food, which Kak Jioi accepts with great appreciation before being asked if he plans to stay in the village. Kak Jioi confirms his intention to stay, explaining that he has lived there his entire life and has nowhere else to go. Kak Jioi smiles optimistically, noting that a beggar's duty is to survive by any means, while Vo Tan recalls Lai Trung's words about the weight of killing. Vo Tan suddenly suggests that Kak Jioi join them, leaving the beggar confused about where they would be heading. Vo Tan enthusiastically takes his hand, promising to bring him to a place where he can be a beggar without fear, just as Ma Ton Ki would have wanted. When Vo Tan turns to ask for the old man's approval, he realizes Lai Trung has already walked off and quickly pulls Kak Jioi along to catch up. Vo Tan runs at full speed to catch up with Lai Trung, breathless as he asks why the old man left without saying a word. They continue their journey together in high spirits as Lai Trung accompanies them, while reminding Vo Tan to focus on his black tortoise divine skill practice. Vo Tan suggests that Lai Trung teach him some sword techniques, prompting an enthusiastic laugh from the elder who had been waiting a long time for that request. As they discuss their journey, Vo Tan asks about their destination, while Lai Trung remarks on Chu San being a natural genius. Lai Trung notes that Vo Tan had never asked such a question before, leading the frustrated youth to demand to know their final destination. Lai Trung explains that the wooden markers at the grave were for the great hero Ma Ton Ki before revealing their destination is Luyang, located deep within a vast forest. Lai Trung passionately explains the heart-to-heart sword technique, noting that while it seems simple, it is the style closest to the true essence of the blade. He demonstrates several movements to illustrate the style, highlighting its core techniques known as bamboo wind and evergreen vine tip. Lai Jioi and Vo Tan eagerly follow his lead as a powerful surge of energy emanates from Lai Trung's strikes. When Lai Jioi asks if they can replicate the move, both disciples look at him with disdain, and Vo Tan begins to shout in frustration. Vo Tan argues that it is impossible to master such a feat so quickly, but Lai Trung counters that he has been teaching them for a month and insists on the importance of the correct posture. Kak Jioi remains silent during their dispute, as Lai Trung continues to demonstrate and correct their physical forms. After some time spent practicing, Lai Trung asks Chu San to attempt the technique, while Vo Tan continues to chime in from the side. Lai Trung is pleased when Kak Jioi mimics his movements perfectly, though he spends much more time correcting Vo Tan, who insists his own form is identical. Lai Trung orders Vo Tan to redo the move with a straight back and proper leg placement, while Kak Jioi studies diligently, and Vo Tan continues to argue. Vo Tan mocks Lai Trung's high expectations after only a month of training, but the elder ignores the youth's comments about the hell of greed. Lai Trung continues to demand a straight back, while warning Vo Tan to respect his elders to avoid the frozen hell as their daily life continues in this manner. Their routine consists of morning training in the Jade script support, evening movement using the purple cloud step, and sunset sparring where Chu San wins 30 consecutive matches. Kak Jioi smiles as he observes the constant bickering between the two, with Vo Tan even threatening to attack his master instead of showing respect. Lai Trung challenges the youth's ability to strike him while Kak Jioi watches, noting that despite their strange behavior, they share a deeply bonded relationship. Lai Trung remains dedicated to guiding Vo Tan step by step, though he never misses an opportunity to tease the boy about his shaking hands and weak form. Cage understands them well, seeing the deep respect and high expectations hidden beneath their playful banter and extraordinary determination. Their constant bickering does not hide a bond that Cage deeply admires, though he wonders when Wooten will ever be able to defeat Zhu Shan. Zhu Shan is determined to win today, and though it seems unlikely, Cage feels a sense of happiness as he remembers his own master. Lost in his own memories, Cage watches the training session end as the group prepares to have a meal with the old man. Zhu Shan shows great respect as they sit down to eat and maintain their health, while rain begins to fall over the city. Cage clasps his hands to express his sincere gratitude for the immense help and guidance he has received during his stay. Li Zhang agrees they may meet again and advises Cage to change his name in Chongqing to avoid trouble regarding the village incident. Acknowledging that he has taken lives regardless of the circumstances, Cage nods in agreement before turning to bid them farewell. Cage continues to wave as he walks away, appearing reluctant to leave until he finally disappears into the crowd of people seeking shelter. Wooten is visibly saddened by the departure, a sentiment that Li Zhang quickly picks up on as he questions the young man's mood. Wooten admits his grief over losing his first friend since leaving Sichuan, though Li Zhang takes the opportunity to tease him further. Li Zhang mockingly points out that Wooten never won a single sword match against Cage and suggests he might never do so. Wooten shouts that he nearly won their last match, but the old man has already walked away, forcing the boy to hurry after him. When Wooten asks where they are headed, Li Zhang ignores the question and simply tells the boy to follow him without another word. They eventually reach a shop in the city where the owner asks if they wish to rent the forge and begins to discuss the price. The owner speaks with disdain, questioning if they are even worthy of watching a masterwork, but Li Zhang introduces a different perspective. Li Zhang claims the owner will have a front row seat to watch the world's finest metalworker, while Wooten offers a worried, awkward smile. Wooten doubts anyone would accept such a proposal, but after a long silence, the blacksmith agrees to the arrangement. Wooten wonders why the owner agreed as Li Zhang pushes him inside and asks to borrow raw materials and firewood. The owner remains indifferent but agrees to the request, prompting Li Zhang to ask for a sickle to be made as well. Vo Tan grumbles while stoking the fire, annoyed at the sudden demand to forge a sword and feeling like a circus performer. Lai Trung ignores the complaints and instructs him to forge a sickle first, wearing a sly smile as he reminds him of their original deal. He points out that the tuition for martial arts and medicine is paid through forged goods, asking if Vo Tan intends to skip a month's payment. Vo Tan's face pales as he admits he has never forged a sickle before, just as flames begin to billow from the chimney. The local blacksmith watches the smoke with concern, noting it has been a long time since the forge was lit and hoping the fire god remains calm. As the rhythmic sound of hammering echoes like jade chimes, Lai Trung sips tea on the porch, confident that Vo Tan will become a master blacksmith. The old blacksmith is lost in memories of his own youth until he finally sees the finished product. He is stunned by the exquisite sickle and trembles as Vo Tan politely asks if his first attempt is worth anything. Upon hearing it was a first attempt, the blacksmith suddenly seizes the blade to test its balance, leaving Vo Tan confused by the sudden shift. The old man executes a perfect strike with an intense expression, causing Vo Tan to wonder what is happening. With a single motion, the blacksmith uses the new sickle to shave an old table until it looks brand new, continuing to test the tool frantically. Vo Tan realizes the man is a hidden master just as he suddenly vanishes, prompting the young man to try and follow him. Lai Trung calmly tells Vo Tan not to worry about Old Man Fong and to prepare for sword making, as visitors will be arriving shortly. Lai Trung quickly corrects himself, noting that the crowd has already arrived, and Vo Tan turns to see numerous figures standing behind him. Vo Tan trembles under their intense gazes as the blacksmith holds up the sickle, marveling at how such a perfect tool could be made. The blacksmith is awestruck by the quality while the others draw their own weapons, desperate to understand the secret behind the forging. The crowd is overcome with excitement, claiming that even the finest blacksmith in Chongqing could not produce such a weapon. The blacksmith remains ecstatic, pointing out that the blade is completely undamaged even after slicing through wood as if it were tofu. The group rushes toward Vo Tan like a hungry mob, their eyes filled with hope as they beg him to share his incredible techniques. They offer anything for his work, clamoring for him to forge swords and axes while arguing over which should be made first. He breaks into a cold sweat, bewildered by the turn of events, as Lai Trung stands up with a cunning smile during the crisis. The others immediately retreat in fear upon seeing him, but Lai Trung reaches out and makes a cheerful proposal. He demands an entrance fee of 2 taels of silver, leaving the crowd silent before they attempt to haggle over the price. After claiming the sword for exactly 2 taels, the scene shifts to a distant road where Kak Jioi continues his long, solitary journey. Something catches Kak Jioi's attention, prompting him to reflect on his master's hometown and the mulberry fields he once mentioned. Despite the rain, Kak Jioi smiles happily until he suddenly remembers his status as a disciple of the beggar's sect. Looking at the cord his master used to carry, Kak Jioi grips it with determination and decides to seek out his master's old acquaintances. In the pouring rain, Kak Jioi confirms the information as the tower master expresses his gratitude and invites Hero Hong to visit anytime. The tower master offers a friendly smile to hide his dark motives, welcoming the beggar's sect disciple as Kak Jioi responds with sincerity. His expression turns cold the moment he turns away, muttering to himself in the rain about his reasons for seeking the local beggar's sect. He realizes that after 20 years, it is natural no one remembers his master, though this sect is nothing like the one he was told about. Kak Jioi is disgusted to learn the Tower Master is part of the sect and requires an entry fee for new disciples in Chongqing. Frustrated that even beggars must pay to join an orthodox sect, he continues his lonely walk, doubting anyone on these streets knows his master. As the heavy rain persists, Kak Jioi asks passersby if they recognize the name of a man known as the Crippled Chicken. He is repeatedly turned away, and while some show interest in his questions about Chongqing 20 years ago, no clues are found. After meeting a group of beggars under a bridge, the four-knot disciple realizes they have no information and dejectedly moves on. While Kak Jioi cherishes his master's token and wonders if anyone knows him, an old beggar rushes past to find shelter from the rain. Shivering from the cold, Kak Jioi decides to make one final attempt and calls out to the old man without much hope of an answer. The old beggar turns back in curiosity as Kak Jioi asks if he remembers a four-knot disciple named the Crippled Chicken from 20 years ago. The old man seems to recognize the name, asking if the person was about a decade older than him, which causes Kak Jioi to jump with excitement. The old beggar steps back warily, describing a clean beggar who frequented the mulberry fields as Kak Jioi excitedly confirms the man's identity. The old man reveals the shocking news that Ma Ton Ki was only a first-knot beggar, causing Kak Jioi's heart to sink as the rain falls. He explains that Ma Ton Ki could never have been higher than a third-knot beggar because he lacked martial arts and was quite slow. Having no master, he spent his time in the mulberry fields and was rumored to have fled after stealing a royal treasure. The old man suggests asking a woman named Long in the lower reaches for more information, but Kak Jioi rushes off before he can finish. As the rain pours and thunder rolls across the darkening sky, Kak Jioi weeps while clutching his token tightly. He ignores the rushing water nearby, his hands trembling as he struggles to untie the knot on the cord. Frustrated enough to bite the cord, he thinks of the beggar ranks where the first knot is for hunger and the second knot for surviving illness. He throws the cord down in disbelief, realizing the third knot rank was just for reaching age 15 and that his martial arts were a sham. Kak Jioi screams in agony that everything was a lie, from the staff techniques to his entire life, just as lightning strikes nearby. Ignoring the storm, he prepares to throw the cord away but hesitates when he reaches the edge of the rushing water. He stands frozen and unable to let go before collapsing in despair, realizing that the titles of guardian and divine energy were all fake. He grips the cord so tightly that the veins in his hand bulge before he slowly lowers his hand into the water, torn by his emotion. With tears streaming down his face and his lips pressed thin, he finally releases the cord into the water during the violent storm. Having cast away his past, Kak Jioi returns to the martial arts hall after the rain to find Vo Tan finishing a heavy training session. The crowd expresses their regret that the session is over, but an old man reminds them that the teacher needs his rest. When someone asks about the proper way to manage a cremation fire, they are told to stop pestering since the great hero is away. Vo Tan looks up in surprise to see a weary and exhausted Kak Jioi returning, prompting him to call out to Uncle Sam. Kak Jioi is brought inside to rest after the revelation about Ma Ton Ki, while Vo Tan sits nearby wanting to offer him comfort. Vo Tan asks with concern if he has eaten, but Kak Jioi claims he is fine because Tiu Thien had already shared food with him. Tiu Thien, a kind girl, offers a bun to the hungry-looking Kak Jioi, who identifies himself as a child from under the bridge while Vo Tan mumbles with a frown. Vo Tan claims he had no intention of eating, but finds it hard to refuse a fellow beggar's offering before slapping Chu San on the back and scolding him. Vo Tan rebukes him for stealing from a child when he is no longer a beggar sect disciple, but Kak Jioi denies the theft as they prepare to leave. Kak Jioi is bewildered about their destination, but Vo Tan gives a mischievous smile and explains they are going to wash away their beggar appearance. Later that night under a high moon, they visit a luxurious pavilion filled with melodious music and the sounds of boisterous laughter. A talented and beautiful woman performs a soothing melody on stage, while Kak Jioi stands dazed by the lavish spread of food and the vibrant atmosphere. Vo Tan excitedly urges Chu San to drain his glass, but after the first round, both men suddenly freeze in place. They simultaneously spit out a burst of fire from the strong liquor, startling the performer who grumbles about the rowdy behavior of the youths. Vo-tan praises the drink while Kak Jioi laughs at his near vomiting, prompting Vo-tan to boast of his fame as one of the three great physicians. Kak Jioi calls him a madman and threatens to discipline him, but Vo-tan remains unfazed, noting their master is away and warning against wasting food. The two continue their wild feast as the woman sings, with Kak Jioi acting out and Vo-tan stuffing his face until his cheeks bulge. Kak Jioi cheers him on as he nearly breaks a record for stuffing buns, and by the end of the meal, they have finished 4 bottles of wine. Kak Jioi sits with a full stomach but grows anxious about the bill, admitting that as a beggar, he has never actually paid for a meal. Vo-tan laughs and says they will pay with money, but Kak Jioi realizes he is penniless, only for Vo-tan to nonchalantly admit he has no money either. Kak Jioi realizes they are both just beggars and slams the table in a drunken shop, shouting about their lack of funds. Kak Jioi panics about being at a beggar sect establishment without money, but Vo-tan smugly asserts his identity as the renowned physician Lai Trung. Kak Jioi tells him to stop being a fool, but Vo-tan sneers that someone of his status has nothing to fear before suddenly vanishing from sight. Vo-tan reappears behind the beautiful performer and draws a small knife from his sleeve, declaring with a drunken gaze that it is time to settle the bill. He stares intensely at the blade as a chilling aura fills the room, leaving the terrified woman paralyzed as he decisively swings the knife downward. His movement is so swift that no one can intervene, and while Kak Jioi screams in horror, the other guests mistakenly cheer for the drunken youth. The waiter steps forward to question the guest, who is loudly pointing at Vo-tan as he dances about wildly, demanding to know what he is doing. The waiter's shout finally rouses Vo-tan from his drunken state, but his gaze turns dangerously fierce, sending the guest into a panicked search for help. The guest frantically calls for his guards to hurry as Vo-tan charges toward them, leaving the waiter to plead for a way to resolve the situation. Amidst the chaos, several men rush forward, including a stout individual who loudly demands to know Vo-tan's identity and tells him to behave properly even while drunk. The guests upstairs find the spectacle more entertaining than the music, while 2 guards roar at Vo-tan, who merely spins around and swings his wine bottle in response. The onlookers are stunned and Kak Jioi remains bewildered as an exquisitely carved object begins to emerge from the wood before their very eyes. Vo-tan nonchalantly drinks his wine and mockingly asks if they want him to stop, causing the terrified guards to back away in fear. The guest quickly changes the subject and orders the music to resume so as not to spoil the hero's mood, prompting the musician to play through her tears. The diners stop eating to watch Vo-tan's every move as he continues to skillfully guide his sharp blade along the wood's surface. With intense focus, Vo-tan strikes the wood one last time to clear the remaining fragments, revealing a breathtakingly beautiful statue. The statue is so detailed it would normally take craftsmen weeks to finish, yet Vo-tan boldly declares it will serve as payment for his wine. Vo-tan recalls an old master's promise that his talent would earn him a warm welcome anywhere in the world, a sentiment that has now been proven true. The impressive thousand-hand Guanyin statue causes a stir, prompting tavern owners to flock to the great hero Hong and invite him to their establishments. They offer him special delicacies and praise his extraordinary talent, though Vo-tan modestly dismisses his masterpiece as nothing more than a simple sketch. Kak Jioi asks the tavern owner for his thoughts, leaving the man speechless that such a work of art was completed in only a single hour. On another day, a large delivery of meat buns arrives as a deposit, which the 2 men then take to share with the beggars living under the bridge. Vo-tan gently pats a young girl's head as she thanks great hero Hong, and Kak Jioi laughs heartily, relieved to see him finally smiling with genuine joy. Despite the heavy rain, the sky begins to brighten as the 2 men lounge in the inn, wondering if they should visit another tavern today. Vo-tan groans from a headache and suggests resting after days of heavy drinking, but when he asks if Kak Jioi wants to go out, the latter remains still. They both lie there lazily until a voice from downstairs calls out for great hero Hong Chu-san, catching their attention. Yak Jio is surprised as Tam Ku and his brother rush down, and everyone is shocked to find that Tiu Thien has gone missing. Tam Ku is deeply worried because the timid boy never goes far in the rain, leading him to believe the water pirates have kidnapped him. When Gak Jio asks for confirmation, Tam Ku nods firmly and explains that children have been disappearing from the area for some time. Though people initially thought the children were swept away by the current, many have witnessed the water pirates abducting them. Rumors of evil sects taking children for dark rituals fill Tam-ku with dread, fearing that Tiu Thien may have already come to harm. Yak Geo reassures him by promising to investigate through a contact and urging Tam-ku to wait patiently while he handles the matter. Relieved, Tam-ku offers his heartfelt thanks, but the response Gak Geo receives from his contact is cold and discouraging. The man agrees to inform his superiors but warns Gak Geo not to expect much, leaving Gak Geo stunned by the beggar gang's indifference. The tower master explains that without proof of abduction, they cannot move against the water pirates, especially given the current circumstances. Gak Geo is furious at the sudden change in attitude, recalling how the man had previously claimed they would always be welcome. The tower master explains that during the spring rains, the beggar gang in Chongqing is always under immense pressure. He points out that if the heavy rain continues, the Yangtze River will overflow, causing widespread destruction and loss of life. Since the entire gang is occupied with building levees to prevent a disaster, no one is available to investigate the pirates. Despite the man's promise to report the issue, Tam-ku reacts with bitter skepticism when Gak Geo returns with the news. Tam-ku questions how they could trust those who view them as nothing more than animals simply because they aren't official gang members. He argues that the levees being built only protect the wealthy upstream, offering no help to the poor people living in the lower areas. Yak Geo tries to defend the honor of martial artists, but Tam-ku breaks down in tears while speaking of the ruthless pirates. Tam-ku points out that the beggar gang has not challenged the pirates in over a decade and would never risk their lives for mere beggars. As others try to comfort him, Tam-ku laments that the gang is more concerned with maintaining their clean image than helping the needy. Recalling the old beggar's warnings about the cost of their actions, Gak Geo gnashes his teeth in a fit of silent rage. He realizes it was all a lie and feels no guilt toward the lowly beggars as the others try to calm him and pull him back to his seat. They remind him not to take his anger out on great hero Hong, the only person who truly listens to them, but Gak Jai opens his umbrella and leaves. Believing he has already done more than enough and that his duty to the village is complete, he decides to give up and walk away. Gak Jai mocks himself as he walks away, realizing his supposed sense of duty was merely the empty boast of a liar when a passerby suddenly stops. An old woman calls out to him, asking if he is the one searching for the Ma Tone key, before introducing herself as Old Lady Long. Infuriated by the possibility that even the name Tong Keen was a lie, Gak Jai suppresses his irritation and asks if the man had fled after stealing something. When he asks if she lost something valuable, Lady Long looks confused and clarifies that the man was not a common thief and never took any physical objects. Lady Long corrects him with the shocking revelation that the man had actually stolen a person, leaving Gak Jai stunned as they stand together in the rain. With her wrinkled face weathered by the rain, she explains that the incident occurred 20 years ago during the internal conflict within the beggar gang. Lady Long describes how two powerful leaders emerged at the time, including the current vice sect leader of the Central Plains, the red-faced old beggar. The other vice sect leader of that era, Lu Sun Kai, represented the traditional faction, and the two sides engaged in fierce clashes that initially appeared minor. Beyond the simple distinction of wearing clean or dirty clothes, the conflict was fueled by a refusal to make concessions in even the smallest disputes. Long-held resentment finally culminated in a great battle, and Lady Long felt a pang of regret as she recalled the bloody aftermath. Lu Sun Kai perished during the chaotic struggle that no one could stop, leading to the traditional faction's forced exile from Chongqing. Lady Long remembered the clear sky on the day Long Hong Trong fled with a child, while Kak Jioi remained silent and somber. Ma Tone Kai had escaped with Lu Sun Kai's son, prompting a curious Kak Jioi to ask for the man's true identity. She revealed his name was Hong Trong before walking away, realizing Kak Jioi likely was not the person searching for the son. After sharing everything she knew about Ma Tone Kai, she requested that Kak Jioi deliver a message should they ever cross paths. She wanted Ma Tone Kai to find her in Chongqing, but she departed quickly, leaving only an upturned umbrella in the road. Once she was gone, Kak Jioi seethed with murderous intent, realizing that the names, the martial arts, and the titles were all lies. Overcome by the weight of the deception, he wept uncontrollably while standing by the edge of a nearly overflowing embankment. He suddenly plunged into the river and dug frantically into the depths, his stiff hands refusing to stop despite the splashing water. As he searched through the withered moss, he discovered knots that triggered a storm of realization within his mind. Kak Jioi's figure soon vanished beneath the surface of the rapidly flowing river, leaving behind nothing but the sound of splashing water. He repeatedly surfaced for air before diving back down, gathering his courage to reach the very bottom of the riverbed. He wept as he realized the 4 knots of the Ho Sun Kai represented a protective responsibility, recalling how Hong Keen once held him. He remembered sleeping peacefully as the old man carried him to a village, brought him home, and tenderly cared for his needs. He thought of the joyful moments when Hong Keen teased him, or when the old man's clumsy falls during training made him laugh. Those memories shifted to a blood-stained wooden staff and the knots of a protector as Hong Keen coughed up a large amount of blood. Sinking deep into the water, Kak Jioi called out for his master in his heart until he spotted a rope tangled in the seaweed. He grabbed the rope and pulled with all his strength to free it from the tangle, quickly depleting his remaining oxygen. His vision faded into a shimmering blue, but he saw a familiar face just before Vo Tan pulled him to the surface to breathe. A short while later, the two lie exhausted on the shore, struggling for breath as Vo T1EADN shouts out a questioning demand. Vo T1EADN calls his companion a fool for ruining his clothes by bathing in such weather, but a sudden coughing fit makes him jump up. As the sun emerges after the downpour, Kok G1EDB laughs manically, leaving Vo T1EADN confused as his companion grips a rope and asks for a favor. Vo T1EADN reminds him that he just saved his life, but Kok G1EDB only smiles and asks for help rescuing T1EC3U Theern from the pirates. Completely stunned, Vo T1EADN asks if there is any reward for such a request while teasing him under the afternoon sun. Vo T1EADN's hands tremble as he holds his sword, while nearby villagers use sandbags to hold back the rising floodwaters. Despite his shaking, Vo T1EADN asks about the plan, only to be horrified when he realizes Kok G1EDB has no strategy. Vo T1EADN is shocked at the idea of facing everyone alone, but Kok G1EDB merely smiles and begins to explain his scheme. They intend to locate T1EC3U Theern's prison and retreat immediately, so Vo T1EADN suggests they first identify the correct building. Looking at the cluster of houses, Kok G1EDB sighs and realizes their only option is to sneak inside undetected. Vo T1EADN calls him a fool, pointing out that his current attire makes him far too visible even from a distance. Vo T1EADN suggests using mud as camouflage, a serious proposal that leaves Kok Vo looking on in utter bewilderment. When asked if mud would really make them look like pirates, Vo T1EADN jokingly suggests stripping naked, earning a sharp curse in return. Kok G1EDB claims he would rather work on the dam, but the sound of approaching footsteps forces them to hide behind a large rock. 2 guards complain about the patrol, noting that while it is unpleasant, it is better than the hard labor at the dam. They agree that patrolling is preferable to facing the captain's temper while building the perimeter fences. Kok G1EDB turns pale as both he and Vo T1EADN realize they are in a very dangerous position. Observing the organized patrol, Vo T1EADN realizes that fighting here is a terrible idea and tries to suppress his trembling while they wait. Fearing they will be discovered at their current pace, Vo T1EADN suggests hiding under the bridge despite the cramped condition. Realizing there is not enough room for both of them, Kok G1EDB quickly moves to find a different place to hide. Vo T1EADN uses a series of hand signals to instruct the other to hide on the opposite side while he takes cover behind a rock, feeling relieved that the heavy rain is masking their movements. He remains surprisingly composed as 2 guards march past his hiding spot without noticing his presence. After the guards pass, Kok G1EDB signals their success with a thumbs up, and Vo T1EADN responds, noting how unexpectedly easy it has been to infiltrate the area. Suddenly, Vo T1EADN breaks into a cold sweat as he sees Kok G1EDB form waver before the man impulsively lunges forward to attack with his blade. Vo T1EADN rushes out in a panic as Kok G1EDB engages the soldiers, clearly exhausted from their previous battle and now cornered by 2 large figures. Kok Gi letter 1EDBI is paralyzed and unable to move, while a pale Vo T letter 1EADN realizes their plan has failed because the initial strike missed its mark. The guards shout arrogantly at the intruder, threatening to kill him for daring to block the path of their superiors. As Kok Gi letter 1EDBI mumbles incoherently, Vo T letter 1EADN runs toward him, desperately wishing for his companion to snap out of his daze and stand up. The guards realize someone else is hiding in the darkness and mock them as stubborn children before one swings his sword with lethal intent. Vo T letter 1EADN is momentarily overwhelmed by a terrifying aura that feels like falling into an abyss, but he refuses to retreat. Recalling the teachings of Lai Trung, Vo T letter 1EADN visualizes the horizontal slash technique to determine how to counter the enemy's opening move. Focusing entirely on his opponent, Vo T letter 1EADN predicts a wide swing and lowers his stance to lunge into the open. The guard is caught off guard by the maneuver, allowing Vo T letter 1EADN to execute 3 feints and position his sword vertically to slow the enemy down. Vo T letter 1EADN drives his blade straight into the guard's heart, prompting the second soldier to charge forward in a fit of rage. Hoping the technique will work again, Vo T letter 1EADN uses another feint and thrusts his glowing sword toward the remaining attacker. Vo T letter 1EADN is stunned to see he has sliced through the guard's helmet, and the dying man acknowledges him as a master before collapsing. After the fight, Kok Gi letter 1EDB points out the blood on Vo T letter 1EADN's face and clothes, which Vo T letter 1EADN quickly tries to wipe away. The two begin searching the nearby houses, noting the area is deserted because the pirates are likely away working on the dam. Vo T letter 1EADN agrees they should check every building while the pirates are gone, though he wonders why the entire group would leave at once. As Vo T letter 1EADN tries to scrub a bloodstain from his shirt, Kok Gi letter 1EDB urges him to stay focused and take their infiltration seriously. Vo Tan scolds his companion, warning that they would have been finished if he had not appeared at the right moment. He explains that to truly sneak in, one must remain silent and hidden from the start, effectively silencing Kak Jioi. Kak Jioi tries to hide his embarrassment by changing the subject and accusing Vo Tan of failing to read his hand signal. Vo Tan calls him out for changing the subject, but Kak Jioi insists they focus on sneaking in as they open the first door. Vo Tan reminds him to stay quiet and move quickly to find Tiu Thien and escape without fighting or shouting sword techniques. They peer inside to find only furniture and no one there, prompting Kak Jioi to resume their argument about shouting technique names. Kak Jioi claims he was taught to shout, but Vo Tan glares at him, saying the noise caused chaos and they only survived because of his skill. Vo Tan insists his mastery saved them, but Kak Jioi laughs mockingly and brings up a memory to challenge that claim. Vo Tan mentions being called a master earlier, but Kak Jioi points out that his hands were shaking uncontrollably just moments ago. Vo Tan points out the final building as they continue to sneak along, unable to stop whispering about who the real master is. Kak Jioi mocks Vo Tan for being bested by his own swordplay for a month, while Vo Tan tries to keep them focused on sneaking in. Kak Jioi confidently bets 5 silver taels that no one is behind the door, prompting Vo Tan to look down on him once again. Vo Tan calls him a penniless beggar, leading Kak Jioi to complain about his companion's lack of conscience regarding the poor. Vo Tan laughs while pushing the door open, and Kak Jioi confidently steps inside, failing to notice 2 figures standing there. They freeze as 2 thugs confront them with a mocking remark about their diligent patrolling, leaving the pair to stare at each other in panic. The door slams shut, and the sounds of a struggle erupt from within the hut before the 2 men cautiously peek outside during a lull. They eventually drag the tied-up thugs outside and threaten them with their weapons, demanding to know the location of the young girl. Vo Tan loses his patience and describes the young beggar girl with pigtails, threatening to stab the thugs if they do not speak immediately. Amidst the silence, Tai Sang laughs and mocks their amateur attempts at intimidation, refusing to reveal where the girl is being held. The arrogant Captain Tai Sang, who claims to have killed over 10 people, tells them they will need to do much more to actually frighten him. Vo Tan grits his teeth in frustration, realizing the captive fears the administrator's torture more than his own blade. As he ponders his next move, a nearby voice suggests an alternative method by pointing out the captive's specific fears. Vo Tan looks back in surprise at the suggested alternative, wondering if he should actually bring the administrator there. The idea takes root in his mind, and as he begins searching through his gear, the curious captive asks what he is doing. Ignoring the question, he focuses on his medicine box, deciding to mix wolfsbane with angelica, skullcap, and ginger to create a lethal poison. He reluctantly collects rainwater to prepare the mixture, hoping the mere threat of the poison will be enough to break the captive's resolve. While being watched by 3 pairs of eyes, Votan stirs the concoction and prays that it will be terrifying enough to induce fear. When Tai Sang asks what he is doing, Votan responds by brandishing a sharp, menacing needle. Votan puts on a sinister expression and tells the terrified Tai Sang that this needle will be far worse than any torture he feared. He describes how the poison will tear through the victim's veins in agonizing pain, claiming it is a fate far worse than a simple wound. Claiming a previous inspector died the same way, Votan brings the needle closer and demands a confession from the stammering captive. Tai Sang tries to call his bluff by questioning a swordsman's knowledge of poison, but Votan's eyes flash with a dangerous resolve. Despite his outward confidence, Votan worries that an incorrect dosage might fail and only make the captive more stubborn. He plunges the needle into the captive's chest, and though Tai Sang initially feels nothing, he braces himself for the impact. Before Tai Sang can gloat about the lack of effect, he suddenly vomits a large amount of blood, horrifying his subordinate. Votan turns pale as Tai Sang's body turns black and his eyes fill with dark, clotted blood. A terrifying black aura begins to emanate from the captive's body as his pupils vanish, causing Votan's hand to tremble in shock. Votan is horrified by the unintended lethality of his concoction as the subordinate watches the captain's lifeless body in terror. Votan quickly seizes the subordinate by the throat and threatens him with the same fate if he does not tell the truth. Terrified by Votan's desperate and crazed demeanor, the subordinate confesses that the girl is hidden inside a glowing cave. At the cave entrance, flickering yellow torches illuminate the interior as the 2 pursuers arrive and pick one up to light their way. Votan leads the way with the torch, reflecting on how swords were used for Chu San and medicine for Tiu Thien, though he has taken lives both intentionally and by accident. As they venture deeper into the trap, Kak Jioi watches him in silent confusion, wondering if these events were truly coincidental. Kak Jioi speaks with hesitation, questioning the scarred man's intent, while a grim Votan insists that those who boast of murder deserve to be destroyed. His conviction sways Kak Jioi, as Votan expresses no regrets and urges them to find Tiu Thien quickly to escape the miserable, damp air. Kak Jioi follows in silence, unable to resolve the internal conflict and doubt regarding whether he has made a grave mistake. He continues forward, knowing the past cannot be changed, but is suddenly startled when they reach a fork leading to 2 different tunnels. The choice is difficult, as one path carries a heavy scent while the other is completely odorless. Kak Jioi suggests sneaking past any potential guard, but as Votan hesitates, the situation suddenly changes. Kak Jioi signals Votan to stop, sensing movement, and presses his hand to the ground with a serious expression that heightens the tension. The look in Kak Jioi's eyes becomes unsettling, causing Votan to grow increasingly anxious as he asks about the number of people approaching. With a trembling voice, Kak Jioi reveals that the entire group is coming, and several figures soon emerge from the shadows as he stands. Finding no place to hide, a frightened Kak Vo retreats while Votan discards his torch and draws his sword to confront the threat. Votan prepares to take down as many enemies as possible, gripping his sword with grim determination before charging toward the group. He envisions himself striking down the pirates with his pale eyes, but quickly realizes this reckless plan is full of fatal flaws. As the enemy's torchlight nears, Votan imagines a different strategy, picturing himself attacking with even greater ferocity. He considers wounding the enemies to halt their advance rather than killing them outright, systematically disabling each pirate one by one. However, he realizes that being swarmed would lead to his certain death, imagining himself surrounded and impaled by their many blades. As the crowd fully appears, Votan curses the fact that his medical studies provided no tactics for cave combat or survival in such a desperate fight. Despite the overwhelming odds, he draws his sword with courage, refusing to beg for mercy as the enemy leader raises a massive blade. The leader wonders how only 2 men dared to fearlessly storm the upper camp after receiving news of their arrival. He asks if they are the madmen who slaughtered the patrol and resting units, but Votan simply raises his sword in response. Votan boldly provokes the leader by claiming he will soon join his fallen men, noting there are over 20 enemies to face. The bandit leader gives a cunning smile and orders his men to eliminate the intruders before the camp master arrives. The bandits acknowledge the order and excitedly charge like lightning toward the two tall men standing before them. Votan prepares himself and grips his sword tightly, leaping forward to face the large men as he realizes he must kill to survive. Votan strikes down everyone in his path, swinging his blade with a frantic intensity as waves of enemies continue to rush him. A look of shock crosses Votan's face as he realizes he has already taken the lives of all the enemies behind him. He realizes he fought too aggressively, but with more enemies charging, he cannot afford to hesitate or stop now. Votan continues to fight with gritted teeth until Kakjioi suddenly leaps ahead and strikes down the remaining enemy. Kakjioi sends several men flying with a single strike, fueling the leader's anger as he realizes how powerful the duo truly is. The two quickly move into a defensive stance, but Votan is momentarily stunned when Kakjioi tells him to snap out of it. Kakjioi jokingly asks if he plans to die playing the hero, reminding him that he still needs help finding Tiu Thien. Votan steps up beside him and shouts that he will not die before reclaiming the 5 taels of silver he lost in a bet. He declares that their enemies will be the ones to die, infuriating the leader, who immediately orders his men to attack. The leader tells his men to give them no room to breathe, and the pirates swarm the duo as they defend against attacks from all sides. Kakjioi uses his staff to take down half of the attackers, while Votan raises his sword with a roar to join the fray. They fight through the crowd together until their weapons are stained and they begin to feel the weight of exhaustion. Votan and Kakjioi lean on each other in exhaustion, hoping they have enough strength left to survive the encounter. Votan's pupils contract as a sound echoing through the cave freezes them both, revealing a massive, scarred man being greeted with respect. The stronghold leader arrives wielding a massive axe, his terrifying presence causing Wu Jin to instinctively recoil at his sheer size. With a savage grin, the man mocks them for thinking their martial arts training would be enough, finding the situation quite amusing. Wu Jin and Ji Jai remain on high alert as the man lets out an eerie, deafening laugh that rings painfully in their ears. Wu Jin senses a powerful internal energy behind that arrogant laughter, marking the man as a top-tier expert, while the hot-tempered Ji Jai insults him. Dismissing the man as nothing more than a beggar with a blade, Ji Jai charges forward with his staff to initiate the attack. Ji Jai believes his staff will punish those who disrespect the beggar's sect, yet the man remains perfectly still as the strike approaches. With a simple flick of his hand, the man deflects the staff and mocks Ji Jai for thinking he could force him to reveal a technique. Wu Jin prepares to intervene while Ji Jai spins his staff into a defensive cyclone, declaring that he cares nothing for the man's words. Annoyed by Ji Jai's persistence, the man brings down his blade with lethal intent, forcing Ji Jai to face the sharp edge head-on. The man threatens Ji Jai with death just as another weapon suddenly intercedes, clashing against the blade in a blinding flash of light. Wu Jin successfully parries the strike and shoves the leader back, but the man only laughs before kicking both of them away. A surge of internal energy strikes Ji Jai in the stomach, leaving both men struggling to stand as the arrogant leader looms over them. Wu Jin feels a wave of resentment, acknowledging that while the man is no match for his master, his internal power is still formidable. Recalling Li Zhang's lesson that clashes must be decided quickly, Wu Jin tightens his grip on his sword and resolves to be even faster. Wu Jin's resolve wavers slightly under the man's unsettling laughter, as the leader expresses his delight at finally having an exciting battle. The man grows increasingly bloodthirsty and dares them to attack, while Wu Jin watches him with growing frustration and bitterness. Realizing there is no easy way to end the fight, Wu Jin scans the man's stance, debating whether to strike from the left or the right. Taking advantage of Wu Jin's hesitation, the man lunges forward with a sudden, terrifying strike that catches the young man off guard. The man promises to take his time killing them, forcing Wu Jin to use every ounce of his strength to block the overwhelming blow. Wu Jin marvels at the man's power, noting that the mere wind from the strike feels like it is tearing his skin despite the leader's massive size. The enemy continues his relentless assault with a fierce expression, his blade flickering before Vo T-letter 1 Eadn's eyes in a way that pales in comparison to the old man's technique. Vo T letter 1EADN can still clearly track the movements, and soon Kok G I letter 1EDBI rushes in to join the fight, boldly charging forward with a loud shout that only makes Vo T letter 1EADN feel anxious for him. Vo T letter 1EADN wonders if his companion has lost his mind or simply knows no fear, yet the staff fails to land a hit, leaving Kok G I letter 1EDBI's neck dangerously exposed. Observing from a distance, Vo T letter 1EADN realizes he cannot truly track the enemy's movements and concludes that the man is merely toying with them like a cat with a mouse. Though they are like mice before a predator's claws, Vo T letter 1EADN maintains the powerful aura of Lai Trunk, determined to find a way to defeat an opponent who treats them like prey. Vo T letter 1EADN furrows his brows in deep concentration, resolved to forge his own path or resort to desperate measures if no conventional strategy presents itself. Each time he is pushed back, Vo T letter 1EADN lunges forward again, grimacing as he desperately blocks every strike while the enemy leaps high into the air. Despite his distraction, Vo T letter 1EADN notes that unlike the twin dog assassins who only use vertical and horizontal slashes, this opponent's saber technique lacks upward thrust. He realizes that the slight delay when transitioning between horizontal and vertical strikes is a weakness, though his mind is weary from overanalyzing the situation. Vo T letter 1EADN plans to lure the enemy's blade upward to expose his torso, but before he can act, Kok G I letter 1EDBI charges in with his traditional staff and kicking techniques. The ancestral shouts only frustrate Vo T letter 1EADN, who wishes his companion would stop announcing his moves since every attack is being easily countered. Vo T letter 1EADN views the enemy with newfound respect as every one of his techniques is neutralized, and he prepares to intervene as he watches his ally take heavy blows. The two take turns attacking the enemy, and seeing Kok G I letter 1EDBI dazed by the relentless punches causes a surge of intense motivation to boil within Vo T letter 1EADN. Realizing that neither he nor Chu San can hold out much longer, Vo T letter 1EADN levels his sword as the enemy aggressively charges forward to meet him. Vo T letter 1EADN narrowly avoids a strike and searches for an opening, but the enemy's face becomes a blur behind the rapid flurry of sword strokes. After nearly being struck by a palm attack, Vo T letter 1EADN faces an arrogant opponent who mocks his scheming and offers to intentionally reveal a weakness. His intentions exposed, Vo T letter 1EADN closes in on the enemy's blade, leading to a fierce clash of weapons that sends sparks flying between them. Lacking the necessary strength, Vo T letter 1EADN is quickly pushed back, only to look up in shock as the enemy executes a devastating windmill saber technique. The enemy blurs across the ground toward Kok G I letter 1EDBI with incredible speed, leaving Vo T letter 1EADN stunned and infuriated by the sight of a mocking smirk on the man's face. Kok G I letter 1EDBI uses his momentum from above to deliver a powerful staff strike, his hands burning with a sudden surge of renewed strength. Suddenly, the staff is discarded as Kok G I letter 1EDBI charges forward empty-handed right before the enemy's eye. The enemy's eyes widen as he realizes Kok G I letter 1EDBI is upon him, while Vo T letter 1EADN smiles with relief. The enemy's surprise is brief as he delivers a powerful kick that leaves Kok G I letter 1EDBI with a bloody nose. Kok G I letter 1EDBI quickly recovers with a cold glare and punches the man's leg before grabbing his arm, allowing Vo T letter 1EADN to charge at the excited leader who recognizes him as a mere beggar. Overjoyed, the leader swings his arm back and roars for everyone to attack, a command that sharpens Vo T letter 1EADN's focus. Vo T letter 1EADN prepares to spring forward, seizing the opening Chu San risked her life to create as he grips his sword with a determination to fight even unto death. Calling the leader a wretched beggar, Vo T letter 1EADN slips through the gap in his guard with a sharp gaze, putting all his trust in his blade. Kok G I letter 1EDBI senses Vo T letter 1EADN's intent and pulls the leader's arm down in coordination, allowing the sword to slash across the man's neck. In Chapter 16, Vo T letter 1EADN's blade draws a spray of blood as the leader's head is instantly severed from his body. Kok G I letter 1EDBI cannot hide his joy at the sight, while the pirates behind them begin to panic and contemplate fleeing now that their leader has fallen. Only the remaining commander stays calm, shouting at the soldiers to snap out of their daze and stay focused. He reminds them that the treasure is still there and their enemies are exhausted, prompting an annoyed glare from Vo T-1EADN. Realizing the man is dangerously sharp, Vo T-1EADN watches as he orders a total assault to prevent them from catching their breath. Despite reaching his limit, Vo T-1EADN resolves to fight to his last breath while Kot G-1EDB prepares needles from a medicine box and charges ahead. Gripping the needles tightly, Kot G-1EDB shouts out a technique he calls 4,000 needles before hurling them forward. Vo T-1EADN feels a surge of annoyance that Kot G-1EDB is shouting the name of a non-existent move just because he happened to name one correctly once. Vo T-1EADN watches the needles fly through the air, thinking the display has nothing to do with the technique's supposed name. When the needles strike the pirates to no apparent effect, Vo T-1EADN is disappointed and wants to curse at Kot G-1EDB's smug and foolish expression. However, the sound of groans catches his attention as the pirates hit by the needles collapse, making Vo T-1EADN realize it was more than just luck. Startled by his own realization, Vo T-1EADN watches as the fallen pirates foam at the mouth, causing their comrades to cry out in shock. The man demands to know what was done, appearing wary of what he witnessed, while Vo Tan seizes the opportunity to intimidate him by mentioning a secret weapon. Vo Tan confirms it is a secret weapon, a lethal poison capable of killing instantly from a single scratch, and he refuses to let such an opportunity pass. His commanding words force the group to retreat in fear as he dares them to approach, threatening that at least half of them will meet the same fate. Vo Tan turns his full attention to the leader, standing tall and imposing as he questions whether the man wishes to end their confrontation there. Vo Tan suggests that the death is insignificant compared to the treasure, before clarifying that they are actually there to rescue the kidnapped children. The man's expression remains stoic as he asks if they are referring to the beggar children, to which the two companions simply nod in confirmation. Confused by their claim, the man finds it hard to believe they would ignore the treasure and risk everything just for a group of beggars. Vo Tan calmly draws his sword and warns that while they need not believe him, the price of interference is death, before suggesting they go their separate ways. As the silhouettes of Vo Tan and Kak Jioi disappear into the depths of the cave, his final warning to kill anyone who follows echoes behind them, urging them to choose wisely. The man watches them with curiosity until a sudden force draws everyone's attention toward a neighboring path. The group scrambles forward, unaware their opponents are hiding in terror, as they bicker and shove one another over who should lead the way. Once the voices fade, the people finally emerge, but a sudden cry causes the two men to turn back toward the girl's father and the vice leader. Unable to contain her emotions, Zio Tian looks toward her father and the vice leader as her sorrow turns to joy upon returning to the Three Bridges. Overjoyed to be reunited with his precious daughter, the father lifts her up before they all go to bid farewell to their two saviors. Yakjai ignores his swollen eyes to wave goodbye, while Wu Jin stares pensively at the blood soaking through the bandages on Gakjai's hand. Wu Jin is simply relieved that Gakjai survived after recklessly catching an axe blade with his bare hands as they walk down the street. He suspects Gakjai used a clever trick passed down through his lineage, but ultimately he is just glad that everyone is safe. Finding a moment to talk, Wu Jin asks Gakjai about his future plans while they head up the stairs together. Gakjai admits he has no plan and suggests staying together, though he secretly worries about the reactions of the Justice faction and the red-faced elder. Fearing his presence might endanger the old man and Wu Jin, Gakjai hesitates, but Wu Jin begins to playfully mock his situation. Wu Jin teases the beggar who just escaped death for now begging to run away, joking that becoming more shameless during a crisis must be his special power. Infuriated by the remark, Gakjai insists that he is not begging, but rather making a formal request or a proposal. Reaching their room, Gakjai begins negotiating who will pay for their expenses, deciding to fully embrace being a freeloader since his reputation is already gone. Wu Jin continues to joke that Gakjai has moved beyond mere begging to becoming a complete parasite. Their laughter is cut short by a stern voice questioning if they enjoyed themselves during his absence. Li Chung calmly sips tea and asks how the sword is performing, prompting Gakjai to excitedly ask what the old man did with the 100 taels of silver. Looking awkward, Li Chung claims he was investigating but admits to gambling the money away, noting that Hong Kat Ki was also present. Turning to a more serious matter, he asks them to sit and discusses the long-standing conflict between the Justice faction and the Beggar faction in the central capital. Meanwhile, news of the death of the leader of the Truong Thuong camp spreads rapidly through the streets outside the inn. Passers-by are filled with curiosity, hearing rumors that two young men, perhaps rising stars from a prominent clan, were responsible for the deed. Even in the coastal regions, people begin to whisper that one of the men was actually a blacksmith from the Tang family. The narrator is unsure of the details, but as the crowds board the ship, the locals whisper about whether the troublesome bandits have truly disappeared or are merely hiding. Cynical remarks about the inevitable return of such filth echo across the water as the vessel finally sets sail. The signal for the voyage to Nanjing is given, and as the ship departs Zhongjing, rumors of the Truong Thuong camp spread throughout the city. On deck, Vo Tan and Kak Jioi gaze at the sea, reflecting on the unexpected rewards Vo Tan earned from his recent life-or-death struggle. The blacksmiths gratefully paid 60 silver taels for their passage, while the leader Fang Jia contributed an additional 10. Lai Trung attempted to negotiate a 50-50 business partnership, but Vo Tan ignored him to share a laugh with the commoners instead. After receiving gold from grateful merchants and a heavy bag from a farmer, Vo Tan returns to his quiet contemplation of his blade. Realizing that the need for strength always arrives without warning, Vo Tan spends his nights under the moon relentlessly practicing his martial forms. He acknowledges that without his dedication to the smithing arts and the absorption of dark energy, the bandit leader would have surely defeated him. Focused on maintaining his mental fortitude for the remaining journey to Nanjing, he continues his training while Kak Jioi watches with growing curiosity. Kak Jioi notes that his sparring record against Vo Tan has shifted to 7 wins and 8 losses since they left Zhongjing. Vo Tan vows to become one with his sword, but the sudden sound of applause nearby causes his focused smile to vanish. A handsome stranger continues to clap, offering an apology for interrupting while he was out enjoying the moonlight. The man introduces himself as Nam Kung Min and explains that he happened to witness the impressive display of skill. As the eldest son of the prestigious Nam Kung family and a top-tier master, Nam Kung Min requests a friendly duel. Despite his high status, he feels a sense of inadequacy for not achieving greater fame during his recent travels across the land. Fearing his father's disappointment over his minor victories, Nam Kung Min recalls how he was suddenly captivated by a mysterious young woman. He was struck by her beauty and the fact that she did not treat him with the usual expectations associated with his family name. Feeling a rare sense of freedom, he became determined to win the heart of the only person who saw him for who he truly was. He used his lightness techniques to entertain her, and seeing her smile at the falling blossoms made his heart skip a beat. Nam Kung Min recalls the days spent with her, remembering how she shyly hid her face while looking at the cherry blossom he offered before Wu Jin's clumsy interruption. That memory remains burned into his mind, recalling how Wu Jin appeared and ignored everyone's stares just to shamelessly plead with her. Claiming someone had food poisoning, Wu Jin asked for the cherry blossom branch to use as medicine since its inner bark is an effective remedy. Nam Kung Min grows furious thinking about how Wu Jin acts as a doctor by day and a warrior by night while stealing the affections of the woman he loves. Wu Jin politely thanked her, prioritizing the patient's needs, a sight that caused Nam Kung Min's eyes to fill with bloodshot rage. Despite his inner turmoil, Nam Kung Min maintains a friendly facade as he requests a formal duel with the hero from the Tang family. Wu Jin's mind goes blank at the proposal, while Nam Kung Min secretly plots to defeat him in the name of his family to win over his beloved. Nam Kung Min grips his weapon with authority, surprising the young lady when she notices he is only holding a wooden sword. Wu Jin feels hesitant about using a real blade against wood, but Nam Kung Min insists on the match, calling him a great hero while secretly gloating. He expresses his gratitude for witnessing a descendant of a medical lineage pursue martial arts, claiming it has broadened his perspective and brightened his journey. Meanwhile, the young lady searches for Nam Kung Min, leaving Li Zhang and the others confused by her inquiry. Wu Jin awkwardly accepts the challenge, though he is secretly overwhelmed by the brewing trouble. He realizes he has stumbled into a difficult situation, as the Nam Kung family was considered a legend back in his home of Sichuan. Wu Jin recognizes that Nam Kung Min is merely trying to impress the girl, and faces that glaring gaze which contains a multitude of emotion. To Wu Jin, that look of intense resentment is identical to the expressions of the most troublesome patients he once treated at the clinic. Wu Jin shouts and raises his sword like a novice, deciding to use mediocre moves and lose gracefully while faking a look of intense effort with a slow strike. Dismissing the attack as second-rate martial arts, Nam Kung Min smirks as he predicts a simple feint toward the head and shoulder. Facing such a beginner, his desire to crush the man wavers, yet he continues to boast inwardly with every heavy step he takes. He decides that an opponent like this needs a proper lesson, twirling his sword while maintaining a facade of kindness. Nam Kung Min begins to calculate his moves against Wu Jin, thinking he is preparing the man to face common bandits in the future. He plans to use the subtlety of softness overcomes hardness to deflect the blade before executing the boundless firmament technique, carefully tracking the silver sword's path. While feigning compliance with the sword's trajectory, Kung Min's movements suddenly become erratic as he forcefully pulls back his silver blade. He intends to redirect his strike to deflect the attack and unleash the boundless firmament, but the tip of Kung Min's sword unexpectedly snaps off. A mental image of the slash flashes through his mind, realizing the wooden sword tip had parried the blow as the sharp fragment whistles past Kung Min's shoulder, leaving him stunned. The fragment flies straight toward his shoulder as a glint flashes in his eyes, leading Kung Min to glare at Vo Tan and wonder if the man is completely unskilled in swordsmanship. In reality, the softness overcomes hardness technique had accelerated the sword's momentum beyond control, resulting in a piece of Kung Min's expensive silk being sliced away as Vo Tan watches with concern. As Kung Min's undignified tumble becomes the center of attention, a panicked Vo Tan drops to his knees and apologizes, explaining that he is more accustomed to dueling with real blades. He admits that his habits made the wooden sword far too dangerous, but Kung Min silences him with a chivalrous gesture, waving his finger to signal that everything is fine. Kung Min claims such incidents are common within the Nam Kung clan, and blames the poor quality of the wooden sword before finally standing up and bowing once more. Kung Min thanks the great hero for the lesson, while Vo Tan tries to deflect the praise by apologizing again for providing such a low-quality wooden weapon. Vo Tan feigns awkwardness and suggests ending the session since no wooden swords remain, but Kung Min persists, praising the incredible strike and noting that he felt no pain from the blow. Kung Min feels on the verge of an epiphany and refuses to let the moment pass, much to the frustration of Vo Tan, who had tried to offer him a graceful exit by blaming the wooden sword. Kung Min asks for more time as the golden emblem on his newly drawn blade shines brilliantly, leaving Vo Tan momentarily stunned by the unexpected request. Realizing the request is for a duel with real steel, Kung Min swears on his honor that he will not use internal energy or any dangerous techniques to prevent Vo Tan from refusing. Vo Tan is reluctant to let this flamboyant youth waste his hard work, while the young woman nearby covers her face in fear, unable to watch the unfolding scene. Realizing his hesitation is futile, Nam Kung draws his blade to demonstrate the triple peak technique, one of the 5 great sword styles of the Nam Kung family. Determined to show the ultimate path of his clan, Kung Min shouts a formal request for the duel, his sheer internal power causing Vo Tan to recoil in surprise. Overwhelmed by the young man's intense aura, Vo Tan agrees to the match, marveling at how serious Kung Min is about the girl before quickly assuming his previous stance. As the duel resumes, Vo Tan considers how to avoid embarrassing Kung Min, thinking that he simply needs to block the same technique correctly this time. However, Kung Min approaches the exchange with a different mindset, believing the same move will yield a different result as their blades clash in an instant. It may not be a case of softness overcoming hardness, but Kung Min is once again trying to manipulate Vo Tan's sword, prompting a calculated response. Midway through the exchange, Vo Tan manages to crack his opponent's blade, leaving Kung Min completely stunned by the impact of the triple peak sword technique. As his sword begins to shatter, Kung Min instinctively retreats while Vo Tan continues his assault, only to be shocked when Kung Min uses internal energy in a moment of panic. Kung eventually realizes with horror that he broke his promise not to use internal energy, but before he can react, Vo Tan moves faster and pulls his sword away. Vo Tan is visibly angered by the broken promise, reminding the great hero of the Nam Kung family that he had explicitly agreed not to use internal energy. Left with no choice, Kung Min humbles himself and apologizes, claiming that serious combat is a habit within the Nam Kung family and asking for forgiveness for his rudeness. Votan sternly lectures him, insisting that a promise must be kept regardless of his family name, and expresses relief that no one was injured during the lapse. Feeling annoyed, Votan sheathes his sword and declares the match over, leaving the embarrassed Kung Min unable to offer any rebuttal. As he bows his head, Kung Min's resentment grows, realizing he has made a fool of himself 3 times in a very short period. He fears the shame of using his family's reputation to cover his failure, his gaze following Votan's back as he reflects on how his spying led to this duel. Votan reflects on the arrogance of the Nam Kung family, noting that he only broke a wooden sword and is only showing restraint because of the opponent's status. Kung attention shifts back to the crack in his blade, realizing with alarm that the real problem lies in how he will be received upon his return. He fears that his father and the elders will collectively punish him, and the mere thought of their grim faces causes him to lose his composure. Kung Min's expression darkens with the terrifying thought that his father might kill him, while Votan begins to sense a murderous aura directed his way. Despite the lack of evidence, Kung Min begins to tremble uncontrollably, wondering how things could have gone so wrong and admitting his mistakes to himself. In a state of panic, he repeatedly begs for forgiveness before his thoughts shift to blaming the sword, wondering if the weapon Votan carries is actually a divine blade. The sword wrapped in red iron catches his eye, and Kung Min abandons all decorum to rush toward Votan, much to the other man's growing annoyance. Votan tells him there is no need to beg for forgiveness to such an extent, choosing to be generous and overlook the strange conclusion of their duel. Votan suggests treating the incident as a minor accident since the initial terms were favorable, a sentiment that Kung Min immediately tries to exploit. After offering his thanks, Kung Min asks if great hero Duong would be willing to sell the sword, only to receive a blunt and firm refusal. Kung Min explains that the sword is very special to him, and humbles himself while apologizing for making such an unreasonable request. He thanks the other for their time and wishes them a good night, but after he departs, Votan judges him as a dangerous man in many respects. Votan reflects that he has never met anyone more selfish than that pink-clad beggar, unaware that Kung Min's smile is turning sinister as he relaxes. Votan decides to avoid the man during the final week of the voyage, but upon docking, a scream about a stolen sword echoes from the cabin. Recognizing the voice, Kak Jioi rushes in to find Votan trembling with rage over a pile of disheveled clothes where his weapon used to be. Veins bulge on Votan's forehead as his killing intent rises, while elsewhere, the stolen sword has already been tied securely to a horse's saddle. Having long since fled with his prize, Kung Min gallops away in high spirits, overjoyed at finally possessing the divine sword. Kung Min envisions a glorious debut in the martial arts world as he approaches the vast and wealthy Nam Kung fortress, a symbol of great power. The fortress features a massive, sturdy gate guarded by soldiers, with a large plaque prominently displaying the name of the Nam Kung family. Inside the compound, a man leads his horse into a small alley and gently strokes the animal as it eats hungrily after their long journey. He warns the horse about indigestion and notes the mud splattered across its belly, wondering just how fast the animal had to run. Seeing the mess, he sincerely worries that young Master Kung Min must also be covered in mud after such a frantic ride. He hopes the young master's debut in the martial arts world will satisfy the family head, fearing they might be scolded after such a long absence. At the main palace, a mud-stained Kung Min carries his wrapped prize and feels a surge of pressure as he looks at the dragon carvings and tidies his clothes. After slapping his cheeks to regain his composure, Kung Min bursts through the doors and loudly announces his return to the 3 Nam Kung elders. Kung Min quickly kneels to show his respect and begins to unwrap the carefully prepared gift he brought back from his journey. He reveals a sword with exquisite carvings, but despite his pride and his claim of having urgent news, the 3 elders remain eerily calm. Tran Thien approaches with a grim expression and coldly asks if the young master's debut was truly grand enough to warrant such an interruption. His voice is terrifyingly cold as he questions the importance of disrupting the elders' meeting, causing Kung Min to bow his head in fear. As Tran Thien reaches for the sword and Kung Min trembles under the pressure, a crowd gathers at the Nam Kung gate, including Votan and his companions. Lai Trung remarks on the successful debut banquet, noting that Nam Kung Min is the son of the sword demon, Nam Kung Tr letter 1EA5N Thiern, one of the 6 supreme masters, much to Vo T letter 1EADN's shock. Surveying the grand banquet hall, Lai Trung explains that such a lavish event was organized specifically because of the host's prestigious status. He adds with a mocking smile that the debut was a success only because the young man had managed to steal 4 swords. As Lai Trung, Vo T letter 1 EADN, and Kok Gi letter 1 EDBI enter, Vo T letter 1 EADN grows serious and questions how a theft could ever be considered a successful debut. Lai Trung puts his arm around the boy and explains that the thief would never admit to the crime, but would instead fabricate a story about a fated encounter. Vo T letter 1 EADN frowns at the flowery deception regarding the display, but Lai Trung excitedly points out that the current situation is actually quite favorable. He believes a crowded banquet is the perfect stage to expose a thief with such a powerful father, leaving the confused Vo T letter 1 EADN to ask about his plan. Lai Trung scoffs at the idea of a simple plan working against the sword demon, the head of the most powerful family in the martial arts world. Vo T letter 1 EADN suggests waiting until the feast ends to avoid making enemies, but Lai Trung laughs and asserts that it is better to be a mad dog than to be easily oppressed. He explains that since nobles value their reputation above all else, the best way to handle them is to publicly expose their disgrace like a mad dog. Just then, a man approaches and waves familiarly, greeting Lai Trung as if they were old acquaintances. The man is revealed to be Nam Kung Ch letter 1 EA5N D letter 1 EA1, and Lai Trung responds with a savage greeting that leaves Vo T letter 1 EADN in a state of shock. Lai Trung mockingly asks if the arm he severed 10 years ago still itches, but Ch letter 1 EA5N D letter 1 EA1 cheerfully notes that the injury makes him stand out, though he prefers to say it was removed due to poison. Ch letter 1 EA5N D letter 1 EA1 asks about the young companion, and Lai Trung introduces Vo T letter 1 EADN as a physician he happened to meet on his travel. When Lai Trung mentions the boy has business with the family, Ch letter 1 EA5N D letter 1 EA1 turns pale, just as the arrival of Nam Kung Tr letter 1 EA5N Thiern and Nam Kung Min is announced. The crowd cheers as the pair enters, with Nam Kung Min leading the way while carrying an intricately carved wooden box. Tr letter 1 EA5N Thiern and Tr letter 1 EA5N T letter 1 ED1NG follow with solemn expressions as the stolen sword is removed from the box and placed onto a display rack. Surveying the crowded hall, Tr letter 1 EA5N Thiern welcomes the guests and thanks them for attending the celebration of his son's martial arts debut. He humbly explains that his son encountered a divine sword during his travels and offers a toast to the heavens to mark the occasion. While Nam Kung Min listens with pride, the guests raise their glasses to celebrate the heaven-sent opportunity the family has received. Tran Thien proudly raises his glass to honor the Nam Kung clan as the atmosphere grows lively with his boisterous cheer. He offers congratulations to Nam Kung Tran Thien and the heroic Nam Kung Min for his righteous deeds, while Min stands smugly by his father. Min remains lost in his perceived victory, unaware of the impending storm, while below the feast, Chanda trembles after speaking with Lai Trung. Chanda's face darkens with the realization that Min stole the sword and committed a grave sin by telling such a massive lie. Chanda clenches his fists, fearing the family head will destroy Min's Danshan or imprison him forever, leaving Vo Tan shocked by the severity of the punishment. Vo Tan questions Lai Trung about whether a father would truly punish his own son so harshly, to which Lai Trung explains the weight of a clan's reputation. Looking at the two arrogant men above, Lai Trung asserts that a family head must treat even his own son as an enemy if the clan's name is tarnished. Lai Trung firmly states that upholding the family's honor is the duty of every descendant, causing Vo Tan to hesitate despite Min's villainous nature. Vo Tan worries about the punishment Min might face if the truth comes out, but his thoughts are interrupted when Chanda suddenly grabs his hand. Chanda pleads with the physician to overlook Min's mistake just once in exchange for compensation, but Lai Trung sternly interrupts the desperate request. Lai Trung warns Chanda that his request is not a favor but a crime, his terrifying gaze emphasizing the gravity of the situation. He questions how a member of the prestigious Nam Kung clan could ask a martial artist to ignore the theft of his own sword, surprising Chanda. Chanda finally accepts the situation, realizing that as Lai Trung's companion, the young man is both a skilled physician and a martial artist. As the feast continues, Chanda bows and releases Vo Tan's hand, leaving the final decision to him while begging for one last reconsideration. Chanda keeps his head low low, explaining that Min only sought his father's approval, but Lai Trung remains firm that justice must be served. Lai Trung declares that everyone must take responsibility for their own actions and tells the distraught Chanda that he is the one who needs to change. Looking toward the stern Tran Thien, Lai Trung asks if they should really allow someone who hides behind a title to become the next family head. Lai Trung walks away with the poise of a righteous man, telling Chanda not to intervene as he focuses solely on upholding justice. Lai Trung stands out in the crowd and stops to raise his leg, drawing the attention of Tran Thien and Min with his overwhelming aura. Before his foot even makes contact with the ground, Lai Trung releases a massive amount of pressure that causes the very earth to tremble. Everyone loses their balance and falls as wine glasses shatter, but Tran Thien remains steady while looking down with a grim expression. Lai Trung makes a grand entrance and greets the hero Nam Kung Tran Thien, remarking that it has been a long time since their last meeting. He apologizes for interrupting the celebration, but delivers a statement that weighs heavily on Kung Min, declaring he is there to reclaim his sword. As the guests follow Lai Trung's gaze, he identifies the weapon as the soul-severing sword, causing Tran Thien to look up while Kung Min looks away in fear. Vo Tan is caught off guard by the sudden turn of events, while Tran Thien, provoked by the intrusion, addresses the mad Dr. Lai Trung. Tran Thien notes that Lai Trung still speaks nonsense after his long absence, but acknowledges that the man is not known for telling lies. Tran Thien demands an explanation, causing Kung Min to tremble under his father's gaze as Vo Tan rushes forward to intervene. Lai Trung enjoys the spectacle he created and slowly remarks that Nam Kung Min has certainly made a memorable debut in the martial world. Vo Tan suddenly steps in front of Lai Thien and resolutely tells Nam Kung Tran Thien that he will provide the necessary explanation. Tran Thien listens calmly as Trung Tan claims that his family heirloom, the soul-severing sword, was recently stolen, leaving Thien Min shaking with fear. Vo Tan explains that his search led him to discover the sword had fallen into Nam Kung Min's possession, a revelation that seems to satisfy Lai Trung. The guests begin to whisper among themselves as Vo Tan takes responsibility for failing to protect the sword while Tran Thien's face darkens. He bows and pleads for help in securing the heirloom, turning the once joyful celebration into a heavy and silent affair. Kung Min is in a state of turmoil, wondering if his theft is being exposed and fearing his father's reaction as Tran Thien suddenly stands up. The clan leader approaches the weapon and draws it from its scabbard, producing a flash of light that startles Vo Tan. Vo Tan is unable to guess the intentions of the powerful clan leader, who then plants the sword firmly into the ground before him. Lai Trung finds the escalating tension thrilling as Tran Thien personally takes charge of the situation and addresses the crowd. Tran Thien demands proof that the weapon is indeed a family heirloom, warning that Vo Tan will face dire consequences if he cannot provide it. Terrified by the intense pressure and the sword before him, Vo Tan looks to Lai Trung for guidance on how to proceed. Lai Trung merely sighs and watches to see how the young man will prove his claim, leaving Vo Tan feeling helpless and alone. Looking down at the sword, Vo Tan realizes that since he claimed it was a family heirloom, he cannot simply forge a replacement, yet he considers claiming he can create an identical one. A sudden spark of inspiration flashes in Vo Tan's eyes as he realizes he can forge an exact replica, and his response leaves Tran Thien utterly astonished. Vo Tan confidently raises the soul-severing sword and claims it possesses a secret technique, a bold move that catches Tran Thien completely off guard. With eyes gleaming, Vo Tan reveals that if his family's secret technique is applied in a secluded hot location, the sword can actually give birth, leaving Lai Trung speechless. Lai Trung wonders if Vo Tan has lost his mind, as the young man continues to explain that the sword is currently pregnant and will give birth in just 5 days. The entire banquet hall falls silent at the absurd claim, before erupting into mocking laughter at the sheer ridiculousness of the situation. Vo Tan begins to worry that he has taken the lie too far, but Tran Thien suddenly calls upon Lai Trung to act as a guarantor for the young man's claims. Tran Thien asks if the claims are true in an attempt to humiliate him, but Lai Trung unexpectedly and firmly confirms the story, as he is known never to lie despite his playful nature. Following Lai Trung's surprising confirmation, Tran Thien strikes a deal and instructs Vo Tan to head to the abandoned forge at the base of the southern hill. Tran Thien warns that if the sword's offspring is not produced within 5 days, both Vo Tan and the eccentric doctor will be executed, and later at the forge, Lai Trung expresses his disapproval. While carrying a bundle of firewood, Votan asks for clarification on what is wrong, wondering if Lai Trung is referring to the story about the sword giving birth. Lai Trung dismisses the sword as the problem, and instead asks Votan why he believes it is better to be a mad dog than someone who is easily exploited. Votan wonders if he simply looks like easy prey, and Lai Trung agrees that the most vital thing is to avoid being perceived as a target for others. Lai Trung adds that one must always strike back, noting with a hint of sadness that Votan has proven himself to be an exceptionally easy target for others to bully. Votan maintains that his behavior reflects the noble character of a great man rather than weakness, arguing that the concept of an eye for an eye does not suit him. Lai Trung becomes frustrated and sternly corrects him, stating that this is not a situation where one should show kindness or mercy. While many things in life can be overlooked, Lai Trung emphasizes that one should never repay kindness with evil, nor should they ever repay evil with kindness. Feeling flustered by Lai Trung's anger, Votan argues that there is no need for such a harsh stance, as Nam Kung Tran Da and Nam Kung Min are truly grateful to them. Votan asks how to satisfy both sides, but Lai Trung bluntly explains that while being a simple doctor is fine, his opponents from now on will be ruthless martial artists. Lai Trung warns that repaying evil with kindness is like inviting a pack of wild dogs to tear at one's throat, yet Votan remains stubborn in his beliefs. Li Zhang argues that Wu Jin's belief in showing kindness to avoid enemies proves he does not understand the true nature of a martial artist. He explains that a martial artist's malice always ends in bloodshed and that the truth is always cruel, while deep in the forest, a hungry wolf is drawn to a flickering fire. Pressing his hand against Wu Jin's chest, Li Zhang insists that enemies must always be kept in sight before giving the young man a sharp rap on the head to snap him back to reality. He warns Wu Jin not to invite danger from behind with cheap kindness, and urges him not to let Nam Gung Jin Ji's words make him soft-hearted. Sitting back down, Li Zhang reminds Wu Jin that as a physician, he will inevitably show much kindness, making it even more vital to remember this warning. Looking at Wu Jin with a hint of sorrow, he emphasizes that whether good or bad, one must return what they receive rather than waiting until they are struck to realize it. Outside, a mysterious figure strikes down the wolf as Wu Jin acknowledges the lesson and returns to the arduous task of birthing the new sword while Li Zhang stands guard. 5 days later, the guests from the banquet gather at the Nam Gung clan to see the results, finding the new sword Wu Jin produced to be mesmerizingly beautiful and more refined than its predecessor. The sword moves with such fluid grace that the opponent's blade is severed in two before anyone notices, leaving the crowd in shock as the broken pieces hit the ground. Everyone stares in disbelief as the three-fanged sword lies broken, stunned by the incredible power of the child sword Wu Jin spoke of. The appraiser concludes that both are divine weapons, causing Gung Myung's anxiety to grow as he remains convinced that one of them must be a forgery. He had initially assumed that Wu Jin would only be able to find a similar sword within 5 days, but the reality is far more impressive. The appraiser examines the blade closely, noting it appears as though the original sword has given birth to a smaller one with a sharpness that vibrates through the air. Finding the balance perfect and the weight non-existent, the appraiser cannot distinguish it from the previous sword and concludes they are twins made by the same smith, prompting Tran Thien to laugh. Tran Thien's laughter grows increasingly manic as he agrees they are indeed twin swords before suddenly pointing toward another location. He reveals the mother sword is present, and Votan raises his weapon to strike and break the appraiser's sword, proving that all of them are authentic. Votan displays the 3 swords for the crowd while Kung Min continues to play along with the situation, stubbornly refusing to admit any wrongdoing. Kung Min remarks that justice has prevailed now that Votan has proven his ownership, but Votan blocks his path and repeats the phrase back to him. Comparing the situation to a stray dog seeking a den to give birth, Votan ultimately decides to help Kung Min conceal his crime regardless of the circumstances. Votan suggests there must have been a reason the sword came into the young master's possession, and thanks Nam Kung Min for protecting the soul-severing sword. Offering a friendly smile, Votan returns the sword to Kung Min and asks him to treasure it before they retire to a guest room at the Nam Kung estate. Vo Tan expresses his relief, admitting he feared for his life but feels the current conclusion is satisfactory. Lai Trung mocks Vo Tan's trembling legs and warns him that while they were successful this time, he must remain wary of the metaphorical hyenas surrounding them. Vo Tan promises to keep the warning in mind, but Lai Trung piques his curiosity by smiling and suggesting that the matter has not yet reached its full conclusion. Lai Trung explains that debts must be repaid and it is time for them to collect, but a knock at the door interrupts Vo Tan's confusion. Tran Thien enters the room carrying a sword with Kung Min following behind, as Lai Trung sarcastically notes the arrival of the man with the unmistakable aura. While Kung Min looks as though he wants to hide, Tran Thien begins by offering an apology for his son's action. Tran Thien reveals that his son confessed to everything after being questioned about fleeing with the sword, and he returns the weapon to a flustered Vo Tan, stating that he must settle the debt for his son's transgressions now that the truth is clear. Tran Thien turns to question Kung Min. Tran Thien asks what became of the maid who stole a silver ring 2 years prior, causing Vo Tan to realize the gravity of the situation as they wait for an answer. Kung Min's voice shakes as he reveals the maid's wrist was cut off, a revelation that leaves both Vo Tan and Lai Trung staring in shock. With an uncompromising gaze, Tran Thien declares the judgment is final and draws his sword without hesitation before a stunned Vo Tan. The image of a sword-wielding father and his terrifyingly ruthless son brings back memories of a diligent and lovely young Kung Min practicing at the dojo. The Nam Kung family plaque and the dragon statue became enduring symbols in Kung Min's mind, as he recalls having a sword in his hand for as long as he can remember. Time eventually turned into study and then into a way of life, requiring him to be honest and precise while practicing predetermined sword form. Deep within his mind, he carried the path his father and clan had carved for him, a journey toward becoming the family head through rigorous discipline and training. Seeing his father's face fills Kung Min with a hint of fear, yet he endured the grueling practice, the strict discipline, and even the most ruthless beating. Whether in his childhood or the present, facing his father's cold back always weighed heavily on Kung Min's heart, as that silent figure seemed to speak to him. The image of his father's back constantly reminded him of his inadequacies and the need to become worthy of the family headship, a pressure that mounted over the years. Driven to succeed at any cost, he admitted to stealing the sword, as his desperate thirst for recognition had strangled his integrity and led him toward despicable acts. He believed that achieving his goal and becoming strong was all that mattered, and though the divine sword brought him his first praise, he realized it was merely a hollow excuse he clung to. As his father swung the sword, Kung Min felt a great burden lift, but he no longer needed excuses as a sword hilt suddenly intervened to save his hand, leaving him stunned. Without that intervention, he might have shared Chanda's fate, and the one who blocked Tran Thien's strike was none other than Vo Tan, prompting Tran Thien to question the young man's actions. Tran Thien asked why he blocked the strike when a hand's transgression should be paid for with the hand itself, to which Vo Tan gritted his teeth and admitted a mistake had been made. Vo Tan countered the elder's logic by explaining that he had heard everything and was taught to return what he received, calmly justifying his decision to intervene. He questioned what he could possibly take to repay Kung Min's error and argued that even if a debt existed, it had already been sufficiently settled, leaving everyone in shock. Vo Tan immediately rejected Tran Thien's reasoning, asking why a knot that had already been untied should be tightened again, leading Tran Thien to sheath his sword and praise his wisdom. Tran Thien thanked him, acknowledging that since his intentions were noble, there would be no further argument, as Vo Tan's mercy had saved the wrist of the Nam Kung family's eldest son. As the family head, Tran Thien noted that Vo Tan had helped them hide their shame while recovering a precious sword, and he wondered how to properly repay these 3 great favors. The following morning, as the sun rose over the land, the family servants prepared to see off Vo Tan and Lai Trung as they began their journey. Having spent the previous night bowing in gratitude and vowing to one day repay the kindness shown to him, Kung Min watched as the matters were finally settled. As they were about to depart, a servant expressed amazement that a divine sword was forged in only 5 days, leaving Vo Tan stunned that his secret had been deduced. Li Zhang deduced the truth after noticing the man's red palms and the iron rust under his fingernail, expressing deep admiration for the extraordinary talents found throughout the world. After being thanked for helping Min Nhi, Wu Jin shyly scratches his head and humbly denies being anyone extraordinary. Wu Jin wonders if Gong Min truly intends to repay the favor, considering the old man has already claimed everything he possibly could. The previous day, Li Zhang demanded access to the Heavenly Martial Library, various elixirs, herbs, poisons, and even a sparring session with the head of the household. Zhen Shaolin nodded in agreement, leaving Wu Jin confused as to why such demands were made for someone who had no idea what rewards to seek. While discussing the repayment, a servant mentions that the Shaolin sect is likely eager to meet someone with his specific skill. Wu Jin expresses curiosity about Shaolin, and the servant explains that the sect has been searching the Central Plains for individuals with exceptional manual dexterity for years. Li Zhang suspects they are referring to the bronze wooden men mechanism that the monks have been unable to repair, much to Wu Jin's surprise. Li Zhang explains that it is a unique mechanical formation and suggests they visit Shaolin since it lies on their path to Luoyang. Upon arriving at a massive gate, Li Zhang tells Wu Jin to focus on the first reward, leaving the young man wide-eyed with shock as the doors swing open. The servant informs Wu Jin that he may choose one book to study under supervision, prompting the boy to scan the collection with great excitement. After thanking the head of the house, Wu Jin notices Li Zhang carefully searching through the shelves and asks what he is trying to find. While searching for sword or movement techniques, Li Zhang pulls out a weathered manual titled The Fleeing Monkey Technique. Wu Jin scoffs at the title, questioning why he should learn a monkey-themed technique after all his sword training, while the servant also looks on with confusion. Wu Jin points out better options and insists on finding a manual that sounds more prestigious, specifically one ending with the term divine technique. With a savage grin, Li Zhang orders Wu Jin to memorize the manual before receiving any elixirs, and later asks if he has finished as the servant brings 3 strange bags. Wu Jin admits he has memorized the text but understands none of it, so Li Zhang instructs him to simply recite it during his training sessions despite the boy's skepticism. As Wu Jin questions the effectiveness of the method, Li Zhang interrupts him by grabbing a handful of the newly arrived items with a sinister smile. Li Zhang forces Wu Jin to eat the strange items, which look disturbingly like parasites, while wearing a terrifying expression that frightens the boy. Li Zhang's distorted gaze makes the experience even more revolting, as he claims the 7 treasure snake venom sacs are both delicious and highly nutritious.